We're ready. Let's begin.
Welcome all. On behalf of Global Kashmiri Pandit Diaspora, I welcome you all today and thanks a lot for joining. आज जो सठा खास दो तो बे सठा खास वेबिनार कैस के आज करवेस घर वापस गसनीच कथ दोयत्रु वरी गई घर छु विनित सठा दूर न च घर वापस गसनीच वत त न छु काम वत हावक 32 years later, home is still a dream and we are no closer to home. इसलिए जो जरूरी इस बनावा पाने पनिन वत. So we thought we will carve our own roadmap back to our homeland, Kashmir. But firstly, what should our return look like? That is the billion-dollar question. There are some key elements, and we are all unanimous in that our return should be safe, it should be viable, it should be sustainable, and most importantly, it should be a dignified and honorable return back to the land of our ancestors. Another important thing is that it should be within the parameters of the constitution of our beloved motherland, India. So with these basic parameters, 2 years ago, Global Kashmiri Pandit Diaspora embarked on a mammoth exercise. It has been a very humbling experience as we have interacted with dozens and hundreds of community activists, lawmakers, politicians, ordinary people like me and you, and people from all cross sections of the Kashmiri Pandit Society and the wider Indian diaspora. The result is what we will see today and we will discuss today is a vision document and a return to a roadmap. A lot of these illustrious members of our community have helped us put in their sweat, blood, and tears, spent a lot of time on it because we are all committed to return to Kashmir. I'm very honored to be sharing the webinar today with a lot of these illustrious children of Merge Kashmir, who we will introduce you in a few minutes from now. They are all in our panel today. Some of them are not on the panel today, but over the next few weeks, we are going to introduce them to you. And if you all have feedback on what we have done, or if you have any concerns, or if you have any suggestions, please feel free to let us know. We will tell you how once we start the webinar. So with that note, and with the blessings of all our ancestors whose ashes are in the river Beth and in Gangabal, with the blessings of our martyrs who have laid their lives for our country, with the blessings of our elders who are still planning to return back to Kashmir, and for our children who still don't know where home is. We will start today's webinar on a very auspicious day of Basant Panchami with the blessings of Mata Saraswati, Merge Dakina Bhagwati, Sharika Bhagwati, and of course with the blessings of Merge Kashmir and Bharat Mata. So with that, I will pass you on to our host for today, Rakesh Kolji from USA. I'm very honored to be introducing him, although Rakesh needs no introduction. He is a successful businessman in US, but more importantly, he is a blessed son of Merge Kashmir. If there's anything you want to know about Kashmir, Rakesh ji is the man for you. I have personally learned a lot from him. And we are honored at GKPD that he is our advisor, he is our co-founder, and he is one of our leading think tanks. And we are privileged to have him today leading today's very important webinar. So over to you, Rakesh ji. Thank you and namaskar.
Thank you, Shafadika ji, to my Bradri. There is not a single Kashmiri Pandit who does not wrestle with the issue of KP genocide and does not have a point of view as to what is the way back to Kashmir to right the wrong. Today, GKPD will showcase presenters and panelists who will release a report on their recommendations to the world on our return. Our hope is that this report will catalyze and invigorate thinking on this subject. We are, as of now, beginning the public comment phase of this initiative. Once we have completed that, then we will publish the final report for action by the Government of India and other international agencies. This catalyst report does differ in meaningful ways from the work that has been done so far. First, it is not a wish list or a claims-based approach. It is a holistic solutions approach which is prescriptive and not descriptive. Because it is holistic, it is now only addressable by the Government of India, whereas the claims approach has fragmented our genocide rights and made the community run from pillar to post to no avail. The responsibility to act on this report will now fall squarely on the PMO and HMO. This report also does not fall into the trap that the community has been in. When one studies leadership failures, the single factor that comes up repeatedly is that one's reach exceeds one's grasp. From that point of view, the recommendations here are eminently doable. Our genocide rights, which we will fiercely protect and never concede, especially as an indigenous people, are enshrined in international law. But these have to be made to conform to the Indian Constitution and solutions found within them. The report does this elegantly, preserving our rights, but operating within the Constitution of India. And with taking advantage of clear precedents that is available remarkably within India itself and also validated globally. Unlike all other prior recommendations, this report bootstraps the strengths within the KP community and makes it a key partner with other stakeholders in executing the solution. We KP community holders are not without strength. Most importantly, this report presents a win for all. It is a win for all selfless KP community activists because it includes all the possibilities that have been articulated so far, whether it be a single place settlement, whether it be clusters, whether it be union territory status. It does not eliminate any option. What it does do is to dive deep into the issues, and it gives, for the first time, definitive recommendations as opposed to abstract concepts. Everything in this report has been scoped out in great detail. And what this report does provide and protect uniquely is the ability for Kashmiri Pandits to have statutory rights that will support their way of life without fear and any possibility of violence. This report is a win for Kashmiri Muslims. Clearly, there are sections which have severe allergy towards Kashmiri Pandits to the point that they'll pick a gun and murder us. They clearly have other sympathizers who are complicit and will silently support. But we are also seeing the emergence of Kashmiri Muslim civil society voices who want Kashmiri Pandits back. They recognize that a monstrous historic injustice was done, a stain was created, and they agree that the terms for the Kashmiri Pandit return must be set by the Kashmiri Pandits and negotiated with the government of India. They will not interfere in that discussion. No Kashmiri Pandit will be disturbed by what is proposed here. The smart ones will quickly figure out that there will be spin-off benefits, that there will be spin-offs, they'll be the beneficiary, and in fact, they'll want to be a part of the return module that is proposed here. If there's one thing true over 5,000 years of Kashmiri Pandit history, globally, it is that we are a force for good, unconditionally unequivocally. And Kashmiri Muslims know that truth about us. There is nothing to fear in our return or in the proposal that we will present. This report is also a win for the state apparatus, which has been paralyzed in discharging its responsibilities because of shameful political calculus and a lack of imagination by not engaging with the Kashmiri Pandit suffering community. The state has alternated between hostility towards the Kashmiri Pandits to borderline passive resistance. Yes, Kashmiri Pandits should apply and get the domicile certificate. Yes, they should file for distressed properties. But just as India takes democracy seriously and will send 2 volunteers to the highest Himalaya peaks with a ballot box so that they can vote, India has to take justice seriously. Prima facie, it does not need KP distressed asset filings to evict genocide windfall beneficiaries from 100,000 homes in Srinagar and the valley. If GOI can grant a passport in 2 days, the global Kashmiri Pandit diaspora should not go through hell to get the domicile certificates. This is a failure that is solely on the shoulders of the state. Until the state gets 500,000 Kashmiri Pandit domicile certificates released, they have not completed their task. There are 2 competing ideals of India. One in which Kashmiri Pandits become extinct, and one in which justice will slay the genociders. The way proposed here is the right way. GOI otherwise risks endorsing a dangerous precedent for India. From our side, what weighs very heavily on us is the loss of our dearest GKPD chairman, Dr. K.L. Chaudhary. His passing away is a clarion call for us that time is of the essence, since the last Kashmiri Pandit generation, which has a link to the valley, is passing away. We will act. We have to act. We have no choice. And Government of India respectfully will have to. Finally, this report is a win-win for global stakeholders who also have an interest in Kashmir. If, when they see Kashmiri Pandit genocide, and they look at it through their own legal lens, and I would submit with greater clarity than is in India, if they see this proposal being accepted, then they will see that India is serious about waging a war on terror. We have a star cast of experts who have contributed to this work. You will meet all of them, but let me lead by introducing 2 of the 3 members who you may not know. Aurobindo Ograji has chaired this report. He's an active community member, volunteer, born and studied in Kashmir, and brings with him 20 years of professional experience in areas of urban planning and development. He has been associated with various urban infrastructure development projects of state governments, central government in India. He was part of the Presidential Infrastructure Coordination Commission in South Africa. He is presently on the faculty at the University of Johannesburg and has a keen interest in the development process of Kashmir. He also supervises postgraduate research, which has high relevance to our community's safe return to settlement and rehabilitation through the ongoing development efforts in Jammu and Kashmir. He has been partnered by Virender Kaulji, who has a Bachelor of Civil Engineering from Regional Engineering College, Srinagar. Virenderji brings 38 years of experience in the construction industry, mainly in highways, bridges, deep foundations, metros, airports, marine infrastructure. He has worked globally in UAE, Malaysia, and India. He is presently involved in a major strategic project in Mauritius. So what you have here is deep strategy, vision, town planning, smart city planning, architect, knowledge, and ultimately somebody who actually has built these kinds of projects at scale. So please absorb what is shared and reflect on it. I would urge all of our community members to stay till the end. We will provide the opportunity in future events to debate the recommendations here. We want to benefit from your perspectives. After you heard the presenters and the panelists, then do write to us and send us an email, which you can find on the GKPD website with your comments. And if we believe that your comments merit discussions, we'll invite you in a future panel discussion where you can present them so that we have a continuous learning process here and put our best foot forward when we finally publish it. And as I said, do stay till the end, because at that point, Dr. Surinder Kaulji will spell out GKPD's global call for action. What lies ahead? As you all know, at GKPD, we say what we mean and we mean what we say. So listen to him carefully. Let me now hand this over to Virender and Aurobindo. Go ahead, Aurobindo ji, please share your presentation, and Virender ji, you can get started. Aurobindo ji, please unmute yourself. Virender ji, please unmute.
Thank you, Rakesh ji, for my introduction. I'll start with the presentation, which is basically effort which has been done over the last 2 years with the inputs from various community experts and eminent community members, and various associations have been also involved into this thing. And GKPD's efforts are highly appreciated, and I really would like to thank GKPD for giving me an opportunity to be part of this thing, handling this important assignment, which is very close to every Kashmiri Pandit. So I'll start with basically the focus on what exactly are we covering in this presentation. We'll first cover up a few aspects around key dynamics around some background of why this exercise was being done, and background on key dynamics around return resettlements and rehabilitation. We'll take through to the constitutional framework, then followed by vision, strategy, goals, and pillars, and then taking through the roadmap, which is short, medium, and long term, just to give an idea on various dynamics which basically will have to be considered as part of the overall return rehabilitation resettlement plan. This is sufficient enough to take us through the land requirements, which is basically as part of the various components of the entire scheme. And under the constitutional framework, we are proposing an autonomous administrative division. That particular aspect will be detailed out in terms of governance, administration, finance, and sustainability. At the end, we are covering towards the conclusion. We are just giving more dynamics, what's currently prevailing in this union territory, what are the various dynamics associated with, for which we have to, as a community, align, because something is already being worked out by the government of India and the union territory, and later on, what exactly is required to be done in terms of following immediate steps, which are to be envisaged as a community from various stakeholders, as well as focused call to action going forward. So basically, just to work on some background in terms of everybody knows about the Kashmir Valley's historical significance and the ethnic cleansing of our community, which has basically internally displaced our community since times. And there is also an issue of the definition of the internal displaced people, because we haven't got that definition in terms of which could recognize the community's different issues and so on. This particular basically roadmap is an effort to provide that context in terms of how do we basically leverage on all of these issues at present, considering the historical issues, considering the current continued issues the community is facing the last 3 decades after 1989-90 in terms of migration of our community, and towards the entire in terms of context of how do we work out a stronger engagement for the dignified return rehabilitation of our community. Going forward, this is just to give you a snapshot of since 1989-90 onwards until now, there has been various efforts at various levels from various stakeholders from within the Kashmiri Pandit and from the association side, from the government side, from the policymakers and so on. Right from 1990, we witnessed a major exodus. For example, 450,000 community members got displaced. In 1990, efforts were by various associations to come together, and we came up with a Margdarshan resolution which provided an overview of way forward. Later on, 1996, we had Amalkol Commission, which worked out various finer details of the return rehabilitation and so on. But there was a huge gap between 1996 to 2008, and not much enough was being actually worked out. And in 2008, the announcement of PM's package gave us some hope towards the return and rehabilitation of our community. In 2010, some transit shelters were developed by the government, and the process started, but there was a long gap until 2014 and 2019 when the recommendations of the Rajya Sabha committee member led to some further in terms of inputs towards the process of confidence building measures and recommending certain concrete steps to be taken up. But between 2008 and 2019, there were not enough actually concrete steps being taken up which could really resolve the safe and dignified return of the community. So in 2019, after the abrogation of the Article 370 and 35, it really changed the game on the ground. And there are serious efforts by the government at various levels. There are serious inputs being put up, but however, there is a lot which is required to be done at various levels. So in 2020 and 2021, more focus on various policies, programs are in shape on ground, but it required a different set of approach in the current context in matching with the government, what government is doing or intends to do. That required some sort of deliberations, serious deliberations to concretize a clear action map. So this was the need of coming up with a vision plan and a roadmap with a concrete action plan, which will detail out all of these finer elements of broader contours which are associated with the community's safe return and resettlement. Now, there are 5 reasons why Government of India actually should recommend GKPD's recommendations. We have looked into various aspects. First, the current ruling government, which has its resolution, they have clearly stated in one of its Sankalp Yatra, where the government had said, the ruling party has said, we will make all efforts to ensure the safe return of Kashmiri Pandits. So this statement is more than clear enough, the intent to understand the intent of the political party. So we have to understand as a community that serious efforts are being done, but there are still certain areas that needs to be worked out in close association with various stakeholders. The second aspect is Government of India holds a strong obligation in terms of they recognize various in terms of communities, various distinct aspects which is related to the cultural aspect, and Kashmiri community is one of that strong entity in terms of which represents that obligation by the government. Then in terms of our cultural identity, we have a strong contribution in terms of Kashmir's Shaviite contribution ranks high in the world, that it had a significant role, it has its significant essence, and globally, Hindus are actually numbering over 1 billion. It connects with that, the cultural identity very well. That's one of the important aspects which needs to be considered into overall dispensation of and working out a suitable plan for the community. The number 4 is basically in terms of the action which requires certain measures over the last 3 decades. There has been several efforts and so on, but which has led to a number of approaches to be taken up. But the current aspect of creating a suitable environment requires a more pragmatic approach. And lastly, basically, we play as a community, we have been playing a very strong role in the society, and as a community, we are forefront on various industry sectors, whether it is academics, whether it is industrial sectors, other industrial sectors, and so on, business, and so on. We hold a very strong in terms of role for the overall societal development. So these are some basic areas which basically demands an immediate attention to our community when it comes to looking at the pragmatic approach to be followed for our safe return back to the valley. Just to focus on the current initiative of Government of India and its deficiency. In the past, although we understood that from 2008, it started in terms of the policy measures with the package and the PM's package, and until the 2019 abrogation of Article 370 and so on, there were series of efforts being driven by the Government of India, like creation of the new jobs and so on. But too little has been done in these areas because these jobs are not sufficient, or there were not enough takers and so on. At the same time, the job is one of the dimension in the entire aspect of return and rehabilitation. There are various threads attached to the whole aspect. The other aspect is while the policies were started, initiated in 2008 and to subsequent to further recommendations with some additional in terms of changes and suggestions in 2014, but it was too late between 1989 to 2008 to work on and so on. A lot of damage has been done in various aspects, or the community being impacted, which is basically very difficult to ascertain. At the same time, even if the policies were initiated in 2008 and 2014, not enough has been actually implemented on ground. Then the current approach of the government in identifying tiny clusters around certain districts or regions of Kashmir is basically a very difficult approach in the sense because it doesn't meet the overall historical background of the community and the current context in which the community is facing, especially those who have been on ground after 2010 policy changes in terms of return and rehabilitation. There are various issues of the ongoing security issues, the safety issues, which we have witnessed specifically in the last 3 years. From that perspective, it is too dangerous to work out and go ahead with those type of arrangements. Lastly, there are other aspects in terms of the jobs which have been created or those who have gone back to the valley. There are issues or in terms of promotions, the delays and other aspects. There are certain discriminatory provisions which need to be addressed as well. So one of the key aspect of this entire the return initiative and its deficiency is more on the housing and accommodation part. So all the government has initiated enough measures in terms of temporary housing and so on, but after post-retirement, the allottees have to basically return the accommodation, which is a very difficult situation for the community. And after 3 decades, even if we have been facing as a community a lot of challenges, and even if that accommodation is being allocated, it's being asked to return back. So there is not enough security in terms of sense of security and other belongingness through these type of initiatives. So these are some drawbacks of the current initiatives which require serious intervention at various levels. And housing is something very critical which need to be addressed. As mentioned in my earlier slide, there are various dimensions associated with the return, resettlement, and rehabilitation of our community. Let's understand for the wider audience, after the abrogation of Article 370, the entire state was basically fragmented into different regions. Now we have Ladakh as a separate region, which is in terms of its own cultural identity, while Jammu and Kashmir has its own significant geographical significance and so on. Now, from the communities aspect, we see urban and rural settlements concentration scattered. Our community basically was scattered across both urban areas as well as rural areas. So it is spread across the whole valley. And it's not just specific urban centers or specific rural centers. The land holding pattern was considerably significant in both urban and rural areas, besides the other properties and so on, in terms of buildings and so on. One of the important aspects of the dynamics is the temples and religious assets. We'll discuss in the following slides later on in the presentation. And as part of the temples and religious assets, it has been the way of living for the Kashmiri community. Temples were part of the fabric of our daily way of life, whether it is an urban area or a rural area, it was part and parcel. So basically our settlements have been clustered and centered around these temples or religious significance, basically assets and so on. At the same time, we were quite represented in terms of service through employment, business, agricultural, and so on. There's a significant in terms of urban and rural setting into this entire spectrum. At the same time, the land holding pattern on agricultural side has been very high in terms of rural areas and so on. Significant property assets belong to the Kashmiri Pandit community. There has been a lot of damage in terms of to these properties after the 1989-90 migration and so on, exodus. And later on, there has been certain efforts to reclaim, but it still continues as of date. There are cases of encroachment and so on. There are dilapidated buildings. Many of the community have not sold their properties or their assets, but they are not in a habitable position right now. We cannot think of going back to those dilapidated buildings and so on unless certain specific measures are taken. Although 2018 policy, which was a package which was announced, provided some option, but there were not enough takers from the security and other strategic issues point of view. Livelihood opportunities were very much lost during this 3 decades. It has been very difficult for the community to move to the different places, while some of them were living on those opportunities which are no longer available after the exodus and so on. So overall, safety and security remained a big issue, even going back to the valley although the government tried their efforts. It is continuing as a big issue as part of the overall aspect of safe return. So these are some of the dynamics which need to be understood from the various aspects when it comes to working out a suitable arrangement which can really dovetail all of these issues of last 3 decades. And the issues are not just during these 3 decades what the community has faced, but we need to connect back to the roots. What was the situation, the habitable situation before 1989, and how people were living in a very harmonious environment and so on. This is very important for the current new planning system to work out in terms of what the community's needs are and how they can be sustained over a long period of time back to the roots. In terms of constitutional framework, we looked at various arrangements, and one of the key aspects which came out as part of the entire research exercise was to look at, based on the specific cultural identity, the geographical identity, and so on. We looked at various arrangements within the India and also We looked at other framework, global best practices, and so on. What we observed that under the 6th schedule of the Constitution of India, which has a specific option which protects basically the preservation and protection and preservation of the identity of native people. So here it basically gives an opportunity for the community to explore a suitable mechanism under which we can go ahead. And already there are 30 autonomous administrative divisions in India which are working under this constitutional schedule. The Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council is one example. Likewise, there is Darjeeling Hill Development Council, and there are other various autonomous development councils. So there is a process by which the government allows, and considering the overall cultural identity and so on. So this is existing. This has happened much before within our J&K state. A special status has been given to the in terms of Ladakh Hill Development Council, and there are various aspects involved into this thing. So the government of India does have that specific in terms of constitution and governance expertise, which can really work out and take this forward, looking at in terms of our previous aspects of the state, and also looking at the current needs where this entire in terms of framework can be worked out suitable for the community's return and rehabilitation implementation plan. So we understand from various research that the autonomous administrative division is a very suitable framework which will allow to larger extent a self-governing area in terms of management under the specific 6th schedule constitution.
Yeah, Arvindoji, I think at this moment, why don't we request Bimal Jadji to give his inputs?
Sure.
Thank you. Bimalji, can you please give us your opinion about this constitutional framework that on which we are basing our whole proposal?
Sorry, can you hear me now, please? I have only 5 minutes. Sorry, my other matter, I'm in a part heard. I'm sorry, my apologies. Rakeshji, sorry, I told you yesterday only. Jai Sharde and Namaskar. Welcome. This is a vision document which I have been looking. This is great. This is great. A lot of homework done on this. And I see, I remember a good Gunther Dras. He has given a homeland is something one becomes aware of only through its loss. And we have lost 32 years. And this vision document, which has been presented by GKPD, it's an in-depth document. I've gone through it. We had a chance of going through it in a last session. So I'll just quote only one thing. The migrants sat all day long on a rocky mound and discussed the affairs of the community. Days were spending sitting and talking about whatever came to their minds, their plight and their sordid conditions. Waiting kept them busy for money. It was a lacerating wait. They had not yet realized that this waiting was not to end. They did not know what they were waiting for. This waiting was not for returning to their homes, not for peace in the valley, but a new day to dawn and the new evening to descend. This is by Siddharth Gigu, A Garden of Solitude. So I see a ray of hope now. This vision document 2022, which is being presented by Mr. Ogra, with able leadership of Surinder Kaul and Virender Kaul and Rakeshji, will give it in-depth things to it. See, I will discuss only constitutional framework, whether it can be done or not. I have been looking into the 6th schedule of the Constitution of India, which is part of Constitution, which gives enabling power to the government present dispensation to declare hill councils, as they did it in Ladakh, as they did it in Meghalaya, in Nagaland, in Darjeeling, in other parts of the country. Because if we go have an in-depth, this needs a lot of discussions and all that, whether this will come under the ambit of 6th schedule, because in 6th schedule, if I read the Constitution of India, I'll just see it needs a commission. It needs a finding of the commissions. A commission has to be appointed, and basically 6th schedule revolves under the tribal areas. And this is how it is being developed. But and on par with LAHDC, which I'll say that Ladakh Hill Development Council, which is being empowered with powers under something like Schedule 6 of the Constitution, implemented to provide same degree of autonomy. I'm going to just project it in that way. How it's a concept which we can see a face of it. See, 6th schedule of Constitution gives immense power to the Constitution as canteen of judgments with the Supreme Court also regarding some powers to Meghalaya, to Assam, to Mizoram, and to other parts, and Tripura, and which has been taken over by Ladakh Hill Development Council Act 1997 as amended by Act of 2018. So, which has given them crucial powers of determining land use and transfer use of natural resources, including minerals, of control aspects like tourism. See, this vision document can be legal and have will have a financial backing also. And because the backbone of a long-term vision that is ecologically and culturally sensitive and endless dignified livelihood, education, health, and other options for us, because we have been denied that for 32 years. And this document will recover the earlier inter-religious harmony. And we are asking for a limited autonomy. We are asking for a district-wise, as Mr. Ograji and Virendraji will just take the vision document through. We are asking for administrative districts to be controlled and governed by us under the Act, which will be governed by the Constitution within the parameters of Constitution of India. So it has to be financial administration and legislative autonomy like that, which I will develop in many other things later on. So it will be a classic example of how the modern liberal statute operates to quell the legitimate demands of us for power of creating small regional autonomous units. As vision document will prescribe, it will start from one district, say Anantnag, because Anantnag has a lot of land. So it will start from Anantnag, it can go for Baramulla, and it can go to Srinagar also. So I don't want to just develop on that, but it is more of an appeasement strongly than the commitment of genuine local self-governance, which will be keeping with the spirit of the Constitution, or Constitution of India. So with the recent move of getting Ladakh UT status without legislature, the above approach may be further strengthened if these power in Delhi are able to see the wisdom of the crucial powers in recognition of the predominantly Sharda identity of the population and its ecological and cultural uniqueness and fragility. So, at par with Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Act 1997, which is an act, I'll just read an act to provide for establishment of autonomous hill development councils and inter-district advisory council in the Ladakh region of J&K. And it extends to whole of districts from Leh and Ladakh. And there is a vision document of 2025 also, which this present dispensation Union of India is looking at, and that's why they amended the 1997 Act by way of an amendment in 2018. So this kind of a vision document, which we are going to present to Government of India in near future, after consultations and after so many marathon discussions by the eminent panelists which are present here. So my humble suggestion to this, to my brothers and sisters of the community is that this vision document is a pious document, which has a ray of hope. I see a ray of hope in this document. See, at par with LAHDC Act, which I call Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Act 1997, as Mr. Ograji has also said about Darjeeling and other things also, they have been a kind of a status has been given and to our community to see that yes, which we are lost in 32 years, which should be given back to us also. and various, this will not be, see, 6th schedule of Constitution is under Article 244(2) and Article 275(1) of Constitution of India. So it is basically with relation to provisions of administration of tribal areas in the state of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram, which are extended to Ladakh also. But there are provisos also. Provisos are that in consideration of report of a commission. So they will have to, that's the provision, because they will have to appoint a commission in appointing an administrative division like which we are proposing now to the government of India. Suppose I take Anantnag. Anantnag has temples. Anantnag has a lot of land which they can give us to sustain ourselves financially. Because important is how to establish your colleges, how to give hospitals, how to have a medical health care and everything. So and this will be governed by that. If government of India has a will and they have that, and we will definitely put a word to it. That this concept will not be an amendment to Constitution under Article 268 to Article 268. It will not be an amendment at all, which 6th schedule itself says. Suppose we have to amend some part of the 6th schedule, that will not be an amendment to Constitution of India at all under Article 268. I will develop on that also in some other way. But I have Supreme Court we have judgments of the Supreme Court and judgments of the some Assam High Court, which says how these tribal councils in so many states have come to the help of the people. It's a kind of a self-governance, but limited autonomy under the framework of Constitution of India. But to have a sustained viability or sustained development or sustained planning, we have to act on it. We have to act on it. See, this is a short legal background I gave about it. There is nothing wrong. We are not amending any Constitution of India. We are not by applying 6th schedule of Constitution in India. They have powers under Constitution. They can do it. If they have will, they can do it. But we have lost our 32 years. Let us not lose more years. Sorry, I'm short of time. I think this discussion will go on, and we will see that we'll go back to our place with honor, dignity, in a secured place where our home earth is, where our temple is. Jai Sharda and Namaskar.
Thank you, Mara Bimalji. Because what I would like to say is that out of 30 such administrative divisions in India, only 10 are set up under the 6th schedule.
Yes.
But the other 20 are set up with a similar constitutional frameworks. They are not exactly 6th schedule. So we would like request your help in that, in dissecting that and making it a very legal and viable demand.
We'll have no legal hurdles on that. We'll have separate sessions on that. How it will be a viable document legally and sustainable.
Thank you, Mara.
Thank you.
Rakesh, you want to say something? Rakesh?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So, Arbindoji, let's go to the next slide.
Okay, Virendraji. So we also looked into the aspect of autonomous council versus union territory, because already there has been efforts in the beginning in 1991 where there was the demand of union territory, and later on after the abrogation of abrogation of Article 370 in 2019, the state was turned into union territory. But now in the current context, we have seen in last 3-4 years the situation, and also witnessed the situation in last 3 decades. So there are certain aspects which are favorable in the autonomous council as compared to the union territory. So in terms of the legislative and executive power, it still rests with the government of India, while as in autonomous council, there are some relaxed norms and so on. So there also, in terms of union territory, will remove the voice of the community in terms of being part of the democratic process and so on, which is very critical for the community, considering the impact which community had witnessed in last 3 decades. There is a need of basically a voice from the community. So the council, the autonomous council is well placed in terms of various aspects to recognize the community distinctly and also provide suitable from the community. So and so on. Vrinderji, anything you would like to add here?
No. I think let's go to the next slide.
Thank you. So looking at the overall aspect of this historical background and the challenges which the community witnessed over the last 3 decades, there was a need, basically a strategic need to take forward the initiatives by the government and other stakeholders over these last several years. While the entire Kashmir is a cosmic fabric, it is very important to understand that entire Kashmir is important, but looking at the current situation, looking at the past experience and so on, which community has faced, it was very important to be very strategic in the approach, which is very pragmatic, which is very doable, which cuts across various elements, which builds on the community's strength, and so on. The whole objective and the vision was to have a safe, dignified return of our community. At the same time, basically focus on our the identity of our homeland in terms of Kashmiri Saraswats to their ancestral homeland and with full justice and empowerment in a very sustainable way. While I said that the entire Kashmir is a cosmic fabric, but we have to look at a very pragmatic point of view from actual planning, actual implementation, and the ability of the government and other stakeholders as well as community to work in close unison to work out a very sustainable way. So we came up with an option we looked at various options, and one of the strategic option was to create a hub and spoke model. That's what we are proposing. And that hub and spoke model leverages on a concept of from the educational foundation, which the community has been very strongly representing in the past. So we are proposing a hub, which is basically integrated hub, smart integrated hub, which is having the educational university township, which we can accommodate the complete return and rehabilitation. It will be supported with high-tech industrial clusters and institutional clusters on the line. We have various examples on the lines of institutional development. For example, Dehradun as an institutional city where various national institutions were housed as well as educational sectors are well presented there, which are famous. And at the same time, we looked at the other aspects in terms of the important contours, which is basically besides this educational component, besides the high-tech industrial component, we looked into the aspect of other sectors which are very strategic in terms of knowledge-based, which bring knowledge-based competencies and so on. The spoke system we looked at, which can complement this hub in terms of sustaining over a period of time, but at the same time, the fabric of the spread of the community has been very vast, not at one location. So we need to also consider that aspect for an inclusive approach, which is very important from the planning point of view to take along the existing communities, which spreads across the region at the same time. So it has to be well structured. It has to be well structured in a way, somewhere we start small, then we expand in terms of as we connect back to the different dynamics, which I have explained in the previous presentation. Now, the specific goal is not one, like, for example, just housing or just jobs. We need to understand the different threads attached to this rehabilitation process. We need to look into the aspect of reviving and building that education for which community was very famous and known for. We had great teachers, we had great academicians and so on from the Valley, which have contributed from the earliest times until now. So education, training, and research is one of the core foundation of this entire approach, followed by health, wellness, and environment and social contours, which are very important in this entire development process. We bring a specific art, culture, heritage identity in the region. This is very important for this dovetail and leverage on its strength. At the same time, the contribution, which we can see the regional contribution through business, trade, commerce, and agriculture, horticulture, floriculture, these are strong areas which can really take the community on a sustainable way. The important aspect of this entire thing, a lot has changed since last 3 decades. We need to build on smart infrastructure and service delivery. This is very important for the improved quality of life in terms of healthy quality of life. Already several initiatives are in place in India. Along these, the governance aspect, political rights, empowerment of the community is also very important. The housing and accommodation forms basically the core and foundational of this entire strategy goals, in which we dovetail the safe return and rehabilitation by providing a very suitable environment, living environment to the community. This is what it means as an overall vision for the community. So we have some strengths in the community. For example, high 100% literacy rate. We have, the community is blessed with high quality resource, which is spread across the globe. We have various connections, historical connections from Silk Route to the trade and other thing. And in terms of the niche sectors, for example, IT, ICT, IT, or in terms of the niche areas like biotech, the medical, and so on. These are certain strategic areas where we have the presence, strong presence in the community, which we can leverage on and so on to work out a suitable plan for going forward. In terms of political empowerment, as explained under the constitutional framework, we are looking for this autonomous administrative division to have a representative area and population for the community. This can be further defined in terms of a specific region, which basically covers not specific to one location, but a region, a territorial area, which has certain in terms of the distinct features which forms conducive for the overall sustainability, which can represent the population very well and so on, as well as in terms of the other specific needs. So that particular area is basically looked into, basically suggested as to be converted as a special development zone with basically the adequate strength of MLAs, MPs from the empowerment, political empowerment point of view. The Autonomous Administrative Council does have specific structure. We'll not go into detail at this stage, where we have representations from the various seats, executive members, and so on. One of the important aspects is under this framework, we are also looking at the inclusive approach by bringing other community members, from other community, other than Kashmiri community. So it's an inclusive approach which will not leave the local fabric outside and so on in this entire political empowerment process. Now, as part of where do we start and how do we start, there has to have a certain framework. We need to go into the specific aspects. For example, Rakesh, you mentioned earlier that the important aspect is the detailing part of this entire exercise, which is very important. And over the last 2 years, we have looked into various aspects, and we understand this we can achieve. There are certain low-hanging fruits which we can achieve in a very short term, but at the same time, there are certain aspects, development process, which is a long term, which will continue over medium term to long term. So this has to be unpacked suitably over short term to medium term to long term. And we basically considered previous efforts from 2008 onwards and so on. And earlier also, we looked into the challenges. We looked into the policy aspects which were announced, but there were not takers. So gaps in that. For example, in 2008, there were, based on the parliamentary standing committee, the recommendations, and also a certain sanction of grants and employment and so on. We have to look that into the today's context in terms of, for example, 7.5 lakh per family, which was announced in for reconstruction, renovation of the houses which were abandoned in 2008 may not be sufficient as of today, looking at the current smart cities context, new technologies, safe environment, living in a safe environment, and improved ecosystem within that particular society and so on. We need to look at those aspects. What are these aspects? And this is possible when we look at from a different lens, which is from a very development-oriented lens, which is under this autonomous administrative division, having a specific special purpose vehicle under public-private partnership, which can give effect to these in a very in coordination with relevant stakeholders like government and other executing agencies and so on. This is very important to look. So this particular roadmap will unpack these things which we are presenting now. The hub and spoke model is basically, as explained, looking into the whole development process where...
Sorry, Arvindoji, my mic was off. Can you go to the last slide? I'd like to add a few lines.
Sure.
Ishi Mara, I will tell you one thing. When we looked at our, the whole concept has been prepared that let us not reinvent the wheel. Let us look at the existing incentives and legislations and provisions in the Government of India, this various ministries throughout the country. And there are some special provisions for our community announced under the PM package, recommended by the parliamentary committee. So nothing is new. All are existing provisions. Like, for example, 7.5 lakhs per family in 2008. Nobody has taken this money from our community. I think one family may have taken. 5 lakhs per person as grant and loan for creation of 9,000 jobs. Not a single person has taken this money because nobody wants to go alone and face the insecurity in Kashmir and risk his life. So what we are proposing that once this autonomous division is created, it will have its budgetary provisions. It will be governed under the Government of India regulations. There will be a budget for this council. And we are saying transfer all this money per family. So if we are 1 lakh families, transfer 7.5 lakhs into 1 lakh into the budget of this council. Like that, for job creation, transfer 5 lakhs into 9,000 into this budget. So it becomes a corpus. Then the council stands as a guarantor for anyone who comes in to make a house or to set up a business. So when there's a government backup, the scenario is different. You are not alone. You are being backed up by a full system, which is coming from the Constitution of India. You are not alone. It gives you a different sense of security. And as you build on this, then there are so many other ways to get the funds for creating your homes, for creating your industry, for setting up the education centers. Money is not an issue for this proposal. Arvindoji, please carry on. Thank you, Mohan.
Thank you, Vrinderji. This is very important because we need to leverage on what is available to the community. I think that's one of the core aspect of dovetailing with the future plans, what we can work out suitably. In terms of now looking at the overall hub and spoke model, what we are seeing, we have to look into the various dynamics. For example, the territorial dynamics, which is basically the regions, different regions of the entire Kashmir, where our community was spread across different clusters in the rural and urban and rural areas. We have to look into a very incremental territorial planning and development approach. We cannot go necessarily one go in all different clusters, where it will be very difficult to manage somewhere, all of these different clusters and so on. And we have been witnessed to this type of approach where the government tried to have different clusters approach over the last 3 decades, specifically after 2008 policy announcement. So there are not success models in that. And we have to look into the incremental territorial planning development approach, but at the same time, keeping in context the regional approach, which dovetails with the earlier fabric as well as current needs from the security and safety point of view. So it has to be looked from a decentralized, at the same time centralized point of view, how the community can be well secured into how the entire development can be worked out in a very for a well secured environment and so on. We also have to understand those existing assets. We also have to understand the preference for the future assets, because our lives have changed after the exodus and so on. We also would like to have a quality-oriented life. So we would like to have a basically integrated, inclusive approach where we would take into a greenfield development, which is basically a new development of state-of-the-art facilities and so on. At the same time, our roots, our assets, our in terms of emotional connect to those places which are in a habitable situation as of now could be possibly improved. So we need to dovetail that brownfield development, existing property development of those area assets, where we can go back to those areas if they are within that regional in terms of ecosystem. So that has to go hand in hand. It's not just a new development. So that also links to the inclusive development with the current society, with the current communities living there and so on. We also need to understand the employment aspect. Not everybody will be employed in services and so on, but we also need to create an ecosystem for a business, ecosystem for other support mechanism, and specifically around the property, land holding, leverage on those agricultural holding. There is a sizable agricultural holding and other assets which belongs to the community at this stage. Out of these temple assets are very important. They are spread across urban to rural areas. We need to leverage on those. There is a huge, in terms of temples, more in Srinagar district, only more than hundreds of temples are there. As an example, now you take each district, specifically the Anantnag region and surrounding districts, it has a sizable huge number of assets, and they really carry a lot of significance when it comes to return and resettlement, because temples have been part of our daily life, daily course. We have been associated with temple. Our day started with the temple and so on. So it is very important to bring that context as well. And this can turn out to be these as economic nodes, along with other measures which the government initiatives are currently in process on the ground. And focusing on smart infrastructure and services, there are various approaches and schemes currently under the Government of India and UT that can be really leveraged on. The whole objective is to have this improved quality of life for the community and come away from those hardships which the community has faced over the last 3 decades. All of these have to be dovetailed to have basically to look into the aspect of a long-term sustainability. Now, in the short term, 1 to 3 years, we would like to focus on confidence building measures. We have understood various measures and initiatives which have been on ground, specifically after 2019, after the abrogation of Article 370. But for example, these measures are commendable. The government should be commended for that. for example, from domicile certificate to basically the portal for identifying the encroachment, and in terms of basically various aspects which the government has been trying to do in terms of job creation and other things, employment and so on. A lot of employments have been filled up, but still there are certain gaps, and these gaps need to be looked into, and suitable interventions need to be in place within the short term, medium term, and long term. In the short term, basically plan, we envisage basically construction of around 15,000 homes in this particular hub, which is a one settlement area, meeting all the requirements, quality improved life, necessary infrastructure in terms of sustainability measures, livelihood measures, and so on. And this will also create an employment in terms of ecosystem for more than 6,000 employees under the PM's package and other announcements as part of the Administrative Council region. Now, as Virenderji explained, in terms of sustenance of funds and so on, this can be leveraged from various funds, which, for example, already the approved funding pattern, which was announced in 2008, can be leveraged on. Besides that, what we are having is a distinct university township, which can really leverage as a global, one of the regional global university township there. We have various examples in India and abroad where we can we learn a lot of things, how these townships have evolved over a period of time. There is not a failure example. These are very good examples. So university township becomes a sustainable foundation to entire return rehabilitation of the community. But it has to complement with other important measures, like, for example, industrial sectors, high-tech industrial parks, which will have several sectors, niche sectors, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is horticulture, agricultural, specific to IT, specific to biotechnology, and so on. These are various areas which can be basically looked into. Now, besides that, we can also integrate with other approaches which Government of India has worked out, for example, for specific to certain communities like Indian Army families and personals who devoted their life for the Kashmir, for the protection of the Kashmir. So it is important to dovetail with those arrangements as well. Now, in order to have a sustainable mechanism, we need to work out for a larger regional area, at least 1,000 kilometer square area, which basically will sustain the entire region and so on. So the allocations for Greenfield development as part of the university township in the high-tech industrial area, along with smart housing system, hospitality and wellness, and other supporting green infrastructure, will form part of this entire hub. This we call it chakra, the evolution where the society will go emerge back to its basically glorious time, which as a community we used to live together earlier. So this is important to understand how we need to evolution process where we are basically having an incremental territorial approach of development. At the same time,
Vinodji, I will just step in. I saw some comments from the audience that our camps and are still existing after 32 years. So we have kept that provision also here. 6,000 employees for whom you have already mentioned that the government is building temporary accommodations. So after they retire, they have to vacate. So it's like a government quarter, which the government employees are very used to in J&K. But they can also come to this area and they can build their own homes without much financial discomfort. As we explained, there are so many incentives and schemes provided particularly for us as well as for the common man of India. There is also a viability gap funding up to 40% in the housing sector for socially backward people. Generally it's 20%, but in special cases it can go up to 40%. So those funds are also available. You, with minimum investment, you can actually build a house in Kashmir and live with dignity. And with your salary, you can pay the EMIs, and you don't need to depend on these pigeonholes, where in one small quarter, 2 families or 3 families are staying right now in very, very horrible conditions. And the tax base is very important for the sustenance of this council. That is why we have said for Chakra alone, at least 1,000 square kilometer area should be given to this council, autonomous council, and so that the minerals and the other commercial activities can provide us a GST base, which will keep on increasing as the development, as the university builds up, the revenues will start flowing in, the taxation will increase, and then the industry comes in, industry will have its own dynamism, they will also generate taxes for the council. So this is how, and then our diaspora from all over the world, they will come with their proposals. It's not going to be an ordinary hill council like a hill council in Meghalaya or Assam, where the economic level of those that population there is something different, and they don't get, they don't have such a strong diaspora who can bring in world-class talent, world-class technology, and international funding. Our community has this. These are our strengths. Once we get this one small chakra, one hub, we will get going. We don't need to depend on the government. We will ask the government, as any other community, if you are having for a Assamese or for a Gujarati or for a Maharashtrian, you have whatever you have, you give it to us. That's enough. Over to you, Arvindoji. Thank you.
Well explained, Virendraji. I would like to also add, I think a time has come when we need to really focus on moving away from temporary to temporary rather than temporary to permanent. In the past 3 decades, the government has been just engaging the community from just temporary accommodation, transit accommodation, and so on. This is very important through this particular approach, development approach. We are actually looking forward to a suitable mechanism where there is a permanent place for the communities to live. So there is need to go away from this transit system, accommodation system, temporary accommodation system, and so on, and have back those times where we used to really have large asset, because our family size was large in terms of joint family system and so on. So we had those, we need to go connect back to that such roots once again. I'll move to the next slide. In terms of the chakra system, chakra spoke, we understand over a period of time, because of this evolution process, incremental territorial process, it has to be supported by various other clusters. That's where we will integrate our various clusters, which is linked to urban-rural settlement areas within that temple clusters and so on. They need to be dovetailed. So these chakra system will be counter magnet areas to that hub, which will really provide the long-term sustainability and dovetail with the existing social fabric on ground at various levels, connecting different dots for a sustainable society and ecosystem. Now, in terms of medium term, 3 to 10 years, we'd like to operationalize these various specific components like university clusters, high-tech industrial parks, the housing component, and scale up the housing component, and other hospitality and smart green infrastructure and services, which are very important for this overall operation aspect of the hub and the spoke. In the long term, we'd like to see that around more than 100,000 homes are basically established, which is part of this Hill Council and the satellite spoke areas. And all of these temples which are existing in the Kashmir Valley are well functioning back to the time it used to be in terms of part of our daily fabric. And this there is a integration of this entire township basically as a very distinct regional identity, where we can say it can lead to a growth-led inclusive regional development for the entire Jammu and Kashmir. We are also, in terms of looking across our global talent pool and resources, which can basically be instrumental in making this particular hub as a center of learning. There are various aspects associated with that: the cultural identity of our community, the contribution in the knowledge and learning sphere, and along with the other sectors, focus sectors, which are very important to leverage on, which is industrial and innovation zones for the overall societal development and so on. This entire development process is expected to generate a lot of jobs. For example, university cluster alone will have around 2,000 job creation, which includes the key academic and support staff. The housing, institutional, and commercial clusters is expected to have around 5,000 job generation, besides the industrial clusters, which is the major contributor of as a high-tech industrial areas across the different sectors, will have 10,000 jobs. One of the key important part of this entire planning exercise in this overall implementation process, we are envisaging that the key strategic approach which has been kept central to this entire planning process is the spatial targeting. We are not saying this is one place, but we are integrating with the region, and there is an incremental process and having an inclusive approach. So we are not leaving out the society. We are bringing the entire community and other parts of the community together as part of this development process. We are also focusing on the spatial justice. Basically, we have mechanisms where we are introducing or proposing the transfer of development rights from housing to housing, or housing to commercial, or housing to institutional, and so on, or vice versa, which can really dovetail the integration of brownfield and greenfield development process as part of this within the hub and chakra as part of this autonomous region. This will really provide a very good resilience for the community. This will provide a very good spatial sustainability as a long-term from security point of view. And this will allow the Autonomous Council to work very efficiently in the region. These are very important principles from the planning and development point of view, which are worldwide. They're very good examples of having, if this approach is taken, they're very good examples where we have achieved success across various cities. Now, we have to understand that we have to translate what is the implication, what is the likely requirements in terms of land and space requirement, besides what the community currently is having in terms of assets and so on. There has been a loss of property, there has been distressed sale and so on. We also need to keep in mind that overall the community has suffered a loss of around $27 billion in addition to incomparable human loss. Currently, the community owns approximately 75,000 acres of residential, commercial, farming, and other assets, land belonging to temples and so on, which we really need to work around when this development process is really implemented on ground. So the entire planning has to work out around these contours. University component, we are focusing on around 500 acres, which is roughly around 200 hectares. This will have more than 100 courses and research centers. It will be supported by academic and support staff of around 2,000. The student capacity would be 10,000, and it will be open to anyone. And it will be fully residential accommodation with staff, visiting scholars, and students. The housing infrastructure, commercial and institutional cluster is also around 500, which will support the university component in various aspects. This will have around 200 hectares. And this will also have an option of, in terms of housing units or housing plots and so on. This will accommodate roughly around 30,000 population and beyond, with 30,000 units actually and plots. And this is not just one aspect, but this will consider the greenfield, brownfield the existing retrofitting, the smart homes. We look into the different target groups within our community, like the senior citizens and those who are going for the, for example, entering into the job arena or business, starting their business and so on. So we look at studio apartments. We also look at cooperative development. This is very important because after the exodus in 89-90, we had very good examples where the community had set up the societies, cooperative societies, and came on the forefront and provided a very suitable environment where the community at large got benefited. So we can explore that option as well. And one of the important aspects is transfer of development rights, which is very important mechanism where, for example, you may have property somewhere around in an urban area, but you would like to, or any remote area, but would like to come back to this area of this hub where we are proposing a single community area. So through this transfer of development rights, one can really leverage the ownership in this new area. This is very important aspect as a game changer if this is approved as part of this entire proposal. Now, high-tech industrial clusters, industrial parks will have 1,200 acres, which is roughly around close to 500 hectares. It will have industrial hubs of 9,000 units. It will span across different industrial clusters, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is agro-processing, high-tech biotech centers, or medical and other areas and so on. So this is very important. This will also actually create a lot of supporting ecosystem within this entire clusters, which we are proposing as part of the entire development process. And the component, the university component and the industrial high-tech component will be dovetailing with each other in terms of the demand and supply dynamics. What university creates will be absorbed within this high-tech industrial park, and what high-tech industrial area needs will be more relevant industry fit courses will be basically taught there, or the research focused on that needs. One of the important aspects in planning these days is we keep looking at the climate conditions and so on. We keep the development process as low carbon friendly and so on. So we are looking at around 50% of this entire area to be more green, to be more healthy from the environmental point of view, less impact of various these development process and so on. We're looking at various aspects in terms of technologies as part of keeping it more green, healthy, and low carbon oriented. Just to give an idea on the Autonomous Administrative Division, here is the representation of some of the selected temples. You can see those temples are spread across from the northwest side. You look at Sharda Peeth as a extent which goes into the POK, up to the northern side, the Amarnath, and down the south where it extends up to the, for example, just for representation, Mata Vaishno Devi. So you can see the spread of this entire corridor. We are looking at the communities spread across this entire valley. We are looking at designation of a special development zone, which will be having all of these different clusters, and as part of this autonomous region. There is a reason behind that. First of all, first is the present land holding pattern of our community is largest in the Anantnag territorial regions, which adjoins the different districts as well. At the same time, the region which is identified has also number of high clusters, religious clusters, temples after the Srinagar district. Currently, the government has also identified significant industrial zones in this area, which is very important for the economic development and livelihood opportunity creation for the community. And the Anantnag region and cluster is basically centrally located out of 10 districts. It's well accessible across 7 districts, adjoining 7 districts, and so on. So it has access to existing infrastructure, especially the water resources point of view, connectivity, national connectivity, and other infrastructure assets, and so on. From the area point of view, the region also represents one of the highest area having area. So this can be leveraged for a development process, territorial development process, which is on incremental, which can be on incremental basis. So these are some dynamics what we are envisaged, why we envisage this particular region as an autonomous administrative region for the community. In terms of governance, administration, and financial sustainability, we did touch on significant aspects around that. What we are saying is that from the safety, security, and surveillance point of view, this region will also, basically, we are proposing a security cadre of at least 5,000 jobs. This will also add to the, in terms of job creation and so on. From the security point of view, because of the high-tech industrial area, it is understandable that the defense establishment automatically, if established in this region, they come up with the secured, basically, systems in place. This is not new. We go to other states in India. We have this system in various places. So we have this high-tech geofence system and so on. So automatically, this will be part of that. In a very secured environment, development can happen in that area. Also, geographically, this region is basically less prone to certain, what we say, disturbances we have noticed, but largely the area is in a very, very geographically well-placed area, which from the security point of view is quite feasible. In terms of governance, we are proposing a hybrid approach, although university will have a different approach. Corporate approach will be more on the industrial and on the housing and institutional side. From the community-led participation, we are looking more into the cooperative housing arrangement and so on. And from the administration point of view, we also look into in terms of like what are the various aspects around administration, like representation of the bureaucracy in terms of IS, IPS, and other arrangement from the financial backup and so on. Then from the financial sustainability point of view, I think I would request Virenderji, would you like to come in here?
Yeah, Arbindoji. So regarding the financial sustainability, we have already been explaining to you. I will just go through the slide. Funding will be derived from the other various incentives, cash supports, etc., from Government of India and UT under the various schemes for our return and rehabilitation. Other than that, J&K and Northeast have been designated as backward areas in terms of industrial policies. So there are special incentives for Northeast and J&K for MSME and for MSME. For housing and industry, existing schemes of Union Territory, Urban Housing Development Ministry of Government of India and Ministry of MSME will be utilized, since housing and industry are envisaged under public-private participation. Our community will invest as per their aspirations and plans. So once it is a public-private participation, public is the first partner, that is Government of India. Private will be us. So it will be a very well, this is a very robust model, which is right now working very well in India. And under this public-private participation, we always open a special purpose vehicle, and that is meant for only one purpose. Like for housing, there will be one SPV, for university another SPV, and for industry and one SPV. And the funds will be transferred to these special purpose vehicles, and these funds cannot be misused. They are very well governed. For continuous flow of funds, tax base will be created from the commercial activities like mining, trading, construction, real estate, service industry. This corpus will continue to increase as the development of this hill councils gets accelerated, and the university continuous construction of houses, industries, and service sector will continue to yield higher tax returns for the division. As the university, industry, and other commercial activities start operations, a regular revenue stream will be generated. International funding agencies will be approached for grants and loans as per their prevailing schemes for endangered communities like ours. There are international agencies who fund such projects. We expect our global diaspora to bring in world-class talent and funding to make the division a successful and enduring entity. Indicative project outlay for this Hill Council at its within next 10 years will be housing. We envisage outlay of 27,000 crores, industrial 30,600 crores, university 2,000 crores, institutional, commercial, and others 480 crores. Infrastructure investment will be for roads, electricity and water and other things, sewage, around 11,210 crores, and Greenbelt 220 crores. Total outlay of 10 billion. Next. Yeah, it's back to you.
Okay, thank you, Virendraji. Let's discuss few important aspects. In recently last year, in 2021 February, government announced an industrial policy package in an industrial development of industrial zones in Jammu and Kashmir. This is a representation of the Kashmir region. The industries around more than 130 such industrial zones have been established in terms of announced. Now, this is very important. They are spread across all the districts. There is a representation of these zones across all the districts. However, certain districts have got more clusters because of certain geographical advantage of the sectors and so on, and the strategic intent and so of the government. You can see on the extreme north western side of this particular map, we have one of the industrial zone which is bordering the POK area next to the Sharda Peat. So the intent of the government is very focused, very strategic. So we need to understand how do we leverage the government's initiatives and approach into this entire development process, and what is more suitable for the community. Now we also look at the temple cluster. For example, this is a representation of more than 120 temples, although there are many temples in the entire Kashmir. This is the actual representation we documented as a research. We also see besides Srinagar district, the concentration of this temple belt is very high in this region. So we have to look into the dynamics of what is happening from the government side, what initiatives they are taking. They have announced the real estate and infrastructure development policy recently as well last year, where the target of the government is to construct various development townships and so on. More than 200,000 homes have been planned to be upgraded in next few years, followed by various clusters of development, whether it is university townships and industrial clusters and so on. So this is very important to understand these dynamics, what government is doing in the state currently. But temples being our social fabric, daily social fabric, this is very important to for us to understand these dynamics. When we look into the dynamics of the land holding pattern, the industrial cluster development, these temples and everything, it is giving us an indicative idea what is happening around this space where we need to really concentrate and focus from the various benefits point of view. So this region, what we have proposed as an autonomous region, significantly meets all such criteria where we can think of a long-term sustainability within the region for the community. So just to focus on the temple shrines and special development, the linkages, I would like to request Rakesh ji to bring in his in terms of intellectual understanding, which we'd like to benefit at the same time now.
Thank you, Aurobindo ji. I think everybody recognizes that when we say Kashmir is the crown of India, it is not a reference to the geography. It is in reference to the fact that European scholars called it as the cradle of civilization. And historically, it was considered the most sacred place for pilgrimage. And whether it was as recently as Swami Vivekananda, who had his awakening movement when he saw the young girl in Khir Bhavani, or it was Shankaracharya, or it was Buddhist scholars who came to Kashmir. There were hundreds and hundreds of tirthas, pilgrimages. Kalana recognized that. He said there is not a space as large as a sesame seed without a tirtha. And he specifically talked about 8 of them. As recently as 1872, Maharaja Ranbir Singh recognized the importance. And he commissioned Pandit Sahib Ram to survey and paint maps of these historic sites. These tirthas were very logically divided into various sects and geography. Pandit Govind Kaul, esteemed scholar of our community, documented them. But still there are over 51 Mahatmyas that remain untranslated. We commend the government's approach for taking some of the temples that have been desecrated and destroyed, and they are rebuilding them. And we should commend the government. When they do something good, we should praise them. But the reality is that there are over 500 temples, and there are probably 1,600 sacred centers still in Kashmir Valley. So how do we bootstrap them? And one idea is, again, from our history. I come from Ranawari. Utpal Kaulji comes from Ranawari. I think, in fact, he's part of the Ranawari temple team. Bimal Jadji is part of the Anantnag temple team. Ranawari was known as Bagh Yogi Lanka because when pilgrims would come...
Rakesh, Madhu Bharti is also from Ranawari.
Okay, so Madhu Bharti ji is from Ranawari.
And you forgot me.
And Bagh Yogi Lanka was named because pilgrims would come, and that was the Dharamshala for them. So we have to turn these centers, we have to build Dharamshalas there. And Zeet here is a proven case history that we can build upon. And we have to build Dharamshalas in all 500 of these temples, where our community members can go first and stay as part of the hub and spoke concept. But more importantly, over time, other people can come and stay. And when they come, they will bring commercial activity for everybody. After all, when a visitor comes to Kashmir, who benefits? We're not the shopkeepers. We're not the transportation drivers. So everybody benefits. So next slide. I wanted to just give a visual feel about what these maps were, how beautiful they were, that were commissioned by Maharaja Ranbir Singh. Here are some pictures. These were auctioned by Bonham so a few years back. Let's keep going. Keep going. So when you look at our Sanatan Dharma, in which Kashmir played such a key role, what were some of the great centers? We know about Sharda Peeth, we know about Amarnath, we know about Mata Khir Bhavani, Shankaracharya Temple, Martin, Hari Parvat. All these temples have large asset bases across urban and rural areas. They're well connected. And we need to have a mind shift. We need to have a mind shift that it's not sufficient to rebuild the structure. Yes, that's important, but we have to turn these temples into revenue generating centers. They will serve the community, but temples are huge revenue generating centers. Unfortunately, in the rest of India, the state is the beneficiary of the revenues that temples generate. But here in the proposed autonomous council, it would be the beneficiary, and it would use those funds for rebuilding our community back in the valley. Next slide. And so for the rest of India, what were some of the yatras that they would come upon? There was clearly the whole Shiva victory tour, Amarnath, Mount Mahadev, the Shiva temple, more recently in Gaurimarg, Kapteshwara, all the way from the time of Kalanna. There was the Devi Yatra. Kashmir has been described as the gods rule the mountains and the goddesses flow in the rivers. But you had Sharka, where Sri Chakra framework was founded. Your Ragnya, your Jwala, your Bala, your Jeshta, and other goddesses. For our friends in the plains, it may astonish you that Srinagar was laid out in the form of Bhairava Mandala. There were Bhairavas all around the mandala, and there is a yatra around that. There is a very, very beautiful story that I have published somewhere, where this Indian princess imagines that she mentally goes on this yatra of Kashmir. And it's a very beautiful story, and it highlights some of the points. Then there is the whole Rishi Yatra. We believe and we maintain that sage Vashishta, Bhardwaj, even Parashuram, Kashyapa, they all resided in Kashmir. And there's a yatra associated with that. There's a Buddhist tour. There's a Buddhist pilgrimage of Kashmir Valley, starting with Harvard. There is the Guru Nanak tour. Guru Nanak entered Kashmir, actually, interestingly, from Ladakh, came through Leh, through Zojila Pass, and there is a tour around Guru Nanak. There's a Swami Vivekananda Yatra. There's a Shankaracharya Yatra. So these were yatras that Kashmiri Pandits went on, that Indians came and went on, and these are of great interest to the Hindu community, and they'll bring prosperity to everybody in Kashmir. Let's continue. So we have to reposition, we have to pivot in terms of thinking of our temples, not just as structures that sit empty. We have to make them centers that serve the community's both spiritual needs and also material needs. Thank you. Back to you.
Rajesh, shall I take this slide?
Yes, sir, please.
Or you want to say this?
Go ahead, Vrindaji.
So why the one place hub with satellite spokes with autonomous council powers is a win-win. As already endorsed by Bimal Jagji, that it's a legal framework. It will immediately move a critical mass of 30,000 Kashmiri Pandits and put the community on a glide path of reaching 100,000 families with the passage of time. It will defeat once and for all the terrorist design to eliminate minorities in Kashmir. It will remove the stain of genocide on the majority community, which was a tacit witness. It can begin the process of building bridges between Hindus and Muslims and other communities of faith in Kashmir, and with a beneficial fallout for harmonious relationship in the mainland of India. It will re-establish the faith of the 1 billion plus strong Hindu community, which feels traumatized that justice has not been done. Recently, we are seeing an outpouring of support for our community from the rest of the country. People are saying that we didn't know. And I think the Kashmir Files has played a major role in that. And the social media over the last 2 years has also highlighted our problems. And the mainland Indians are sitting up and listening. And some of them are saying, sorry, we didn't know. So this demand is going to resonate throughout the country that we need to be sent back. And for the present government, it's not going to be an easy thing now onwards. We need to make life difficult for the government, whichever government it is. Unless they settle our issue, they should not convert the union territory to the state. That should be our leveraging point with the government. For that, even if we have to come to the roads, we should come. The proposed vision and action plan dovetails and integrates well with the current government of India and J&K Union Territory's strategic approach to infrastructure development, industrial and real estate policy framework. As I said, we are not reinventing a wheel here. There is not a single new thing that we are going to ask from the government. These are all existing guidelines, existing legislations, existing administrative frameworks which we are using. And it will be very difficult for the government of India to say no to this. If they say no to this also, then you can say that there is a rat in the ship. So immediate spin-offs will be transit plus migrant camps. They will shift to a permanent settlement status. PM package employees and our brothers and sisters living in Kurku and Mutti and Nagrota, they can find a home which they can call their own. Retired people all over the world, our diaspora, the senior citizens, they want to come to Kashmir for to reconnect with their roots. We can make very nice homes for them. Security forces will need accommodation. We can keep a provision for them. We can make huge housing for our security forces. They can pay us rent. It will be a revenue generation. Government employees will need accommodation and other categories. So development options will be rental plus freehold. Next slide, Bara. Way forward, Rakeshji, I would like you to request you to please take this slide.
Okay, thank you, Virendraji. So what's the way forward? We are recommending for our community, for our brothers and sisters in the valley, and all stakeholders, starting with the government of India, that a special development zone be carved out of Anantnag and surrounding districts with status of Autonomous Administration Council territorial region under the 6th schedule be granted to this entity. Number 2, that a high-powered committee working group be designated for return, resettlement, and rehabilitation of Kashmiri Pandits in the valley. That this regional hub, special development zone, be designated as such so that universities, housing, industrial clusters, agro-processing, hospitality, and wellness precincts can be tax advantage and the economic engine can be kickstarted. Number 3, Anantnag has sanctioned strength of 12 MLAs at present. This is likely to increase further after the Delimitation Commission recommendations are fully implemented. We request that the Kashmiri Pandit community get 5 MLAs and 1 MP seat that will come from the Autonomous Administrative Division territorial region. We would request our Kashmiri Pandit community that they come forward and identify areas where they're willing to lead public-private partnerships, business groups, and be part of the cooperative system for housing development. We've already talked a lot about the transit accommodations being converted into permanent accommodation, and this very innovative suggestion that Aurobindoji has given, that Kashmiri Pandit land that may be stuck somewhere where it is not feasible to go back to, that we have transfer of development rights where they can get equivalent land within the autonomous zone. And of course, the diaspora will seek the help of international agencies. It's very encouraging to see that UAE government and private companies are now going to be leading major projects in the valley. And so we don't expect any difficulty in lining up international support. So this is our set of recommendations. Next slide.
I think
Okay.
our presentation is over, and Shefalika ji or Rakesh ji, can we ask Surinder ji to come in here?
No, we'll keep Surinder ji at the end. I think we want, because I want to give a chance for Nija ji to ask some of our distinguished panelists to give some quick comments to what the presenters have shared, and then we'll ask Surinder ji to give the ending remarks and call to action. It's okay. Go ahead, Nija.
Thank you, Rakesh ji, and Namaskar, Sarni. Before I invite our eminent panelists to share their views about the presentation today, I would like to say a few words about the presentation as such. Brilliant, educative session as always, Aurobindo ji. This is not the first time you walked us through this, but every time I get to see it, I get to hear you, there's always something new, something fresh coming up. I have immense respect and great admiration for you. You have taken every input from each one of us with utmost grace and patience. I must commend you, Aurobindo ji, for this path-breaking and holistic action plan that you've just, it's been 2 years that you have been working on it, but you've just presented to the community. It addresses each and every component of our sustainability, be it security, which probably, and rightly so, is first and foremost in our priority list, education, economics, governance, administration, religious freedom, and ecological sustenance as well. 2 years of your hard work, absolute and solid research, consultations with experts, and above all, your expertise in the field. That's what makes this document very holistic and needs to be pursued with all our might. Of course, with the blessings of our community members, inputs, which we are open to, and suggestions, if any, kindly drop us a line or an email at kpglobaldiaspora@gmail.com. Now, not taking more time, I would like to invite our first panelist, expert from education field. We did hear Bimalji earlier, and that was very reassuring and very encouraging. So let me invite Raj Nehruji. Raj Nehruji, as we all know, he's the Vice Chancellor of the very first skilled University of India, Vishwakarma Skill University. UGC has appointed him as a member on formation of implementation plan for National Education Policy 2020. He has been nominated as life member of Advisory Council of Policy Research Foundation, and Utsav Foundation, which is his brainchild, educates and skills underprivileged children from slums. Raji, we welcome you, and please share your thoughts about the presentation. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. Namaskar. Thank you, Shefalika ji, and Virender Kaul ji, Rakesh ji, Utpal ji, Surinder ji, and Aurobindo ji. I think brilliant presentation that you have made. I will open up with one small statement that aim for the moon. If you miss, you may hit a star. And to reach the stars, we may have to dream of the moon. So the presentation is highly aspirational, and this is the attitude that the community members should have as far as the return is concerned, rehabilitation is concerned. There may be multiple propositions going on from multiple sides, but I think the way you have put across all the aspects and all different dimensions that you have touched, it shows the assertiveness of this global Kashmiri Pandit diaspora about a solid thought process that has gone behind this. Couple of things when I was looking at this, while it's a very, very aspirational part of seeking a council, autonomous council, and rightly said that when you compare it with the other propositions, almost all the propositions have their pluses and minuses, and each proposition has to be examined and evaluated. We had Bimal Judge, who was very good, who was highly talking about the possibilities of autonomous council. Well, that's a great idea. We also have to see how the hub and spoke gets integrated into an autonomous council. That's something that the spoke part, I was a little, I was thinking about it, that how that part is getting integrated, but I'm sure as the things proceed, there would be more clarity about that part. The other aspect was we must also examine, as I was looking at the charts, there are more than 30 councils in the country and 10 under the Schedule 6. We must examine that how these councils have faced, what kind of challenges these councils have faced in last many decades. Some are very old and some are pretty new, but we must examine them and find out what kind of challenges. Because I have personally, when I have been traveling, I have been talking to many people. Some of the people are from the council. There has been a lot of encroachment on the council and the powers of the council, the rights and jurisdiction, and disempowering the representatives of the council. So that part must also be examined, and that part must be weaved in when the propositions are put forward to the government, so that we take care of those aspects and insulate the proposal with the risks and challenges which we can learn from the challenges or the failures some of the councils are today experiencing. I have been recently hearing about the Ladakh as well, that how they were feeling a little bit suffocated in that process. But those learnings can help in building and strengthening the proposal that you have talked about. There's a great and aspirational budget that we have put across, almost 75,000 crore. I think the government of India, it's almost 7.5% or the 8%. I was just calculating while I was listening, because the government of India announced 7.5 lakh crore budget, the 22-23, and we are asking for 7.5% of that budget. State only got 33 or 35,000 crore budget, but it's very aspirational, because if you look at the Ladakh Union Territory, it has only got 5,000 crore budget, but asking for a 7.5% budget is really aspirational, and it requires a solid plan when we present it to the government seeking for certain aspects. I only had one point. When we use the word inclusive, we must use it very carefully, because this inclusivity has been misrepresented and misunderstood in last couple of decades, especially in the Kashmir, and where we have seen people talk about that it's only the radicals, who are very few in population, who have done this violence, and justifying and exonerating the moderates out of it. I sometimes feel that some of the so-called moderates have been even more violent through their silence, and they are even more dangerous because they practice the laws of deception, and that's where we need to be careful about, because it is the combination of these deceptive people and the violent people who has created a dysfunctional society in Kashmir, where today any difference or disagreement is seen as a threat to their existence or to their faith, and that eventually has given birth to intolerance and hostility. So when we use the word inclusivity, we must carefully examine what are the contours of this word inclusivity, because with one more thing which is very important for us to know, the old adage is dying in Kashmir and the new breed of people is coming up, and with the more passing day, the old bitterness is turning into a new hatred. So that part must be taken care. While it's very important to live together, but given the circumstances we have been into and the situation in the Kashmir and what what's happening in the other parts of the world, which has an impact on Kashmir, we must examine that part as well. And you have rightfully brought the aspirations of almost every Kashmiri Pandit who is today living in exile, whether it's from the rural belt or the urban belt, or people living in different parts who were orchards or who had their houses, properties. I think you have beautifully brought their aspirations into your presentation. The beauty of your presentation, I loved it, was started from the IDP. I think that's one part that we have been deprived of, and I find that is where biggest human rights violation has happened with Kashmiri Pandits. Instead of calling us IDPs, we have been labeled as migrants. And I think that the only reason for that time government was to deny and elude responsibility for the protection by implying that their movement was voluntarily, though it was not a voluntary movement when we had to flee from Kashmir, but government had protected themselves at that time and labeled us as migrants. And also it was a way that state was denying that they were weak in protecting the minority community in the states. I think by depriving us of that title of internally displaced, it was a major human rights violation. Despite 32 years have elapsed, no measures have been taken for setting up any kind of independent investigation that can scrutinize the displacement circumstances, because it's very important that any return must address the issues that have resulted into the displacement and forced exodus of Kashmir. Because if you do not fundamentally address the issues that resulted into the exodus, it would be very difficult for any of the community members to really feel assured about what they are going to see when they return back to the Kashmir. There is also a need that government must set up a committee to understand the challenges this community is facing now and for going to be facing in future by virtue of the exodus, and then prepare certain kinds of roadmaps and certain kinds of plan. You very well talked about the culture, and Rakeshji beautifully brought about various dimensions and various aspects of culture. I think this is another human rights violation. UNESCO has declarations that they talk about the culture and identity as being part of our human rights and fundamental part of our development. You see, the cultural rights are an integral part of human rights, and we have been deprived of those cultural rights. Unfortunately, this exodus has not only deprived the whole community of their sense of identity, safety, and dignity, but also their human rights as a community, because we have lost connect with our temples, we have lost connect with our culture, we have lost connect with our practices, we have lost connect with our language. And that is another violation that has happened with us. And that also has been captured very well, how this new proposition can address that, the potential of the proposition to address that. I think another aspect that I am very keen that you should be talking about is that in the current phase, because what you have asked for is a huge aspiration, and as long as those aspirations do not get met, we must make sure the quality of the living of our people in the camps, in the places where they are today, is improved. See, today, if we look at the camps and then we resonate those camps with the return of some other place in Kashmir, we should not be having that replaced with a decorated slum, the way we have today, having our Kashmiri Pandits living in some of the camps. They are the kind of decorated slum. So the first priority is, while we work on the propositions, and it will take time, the quality of living, education, healthcare, sanitation, and other aspects must be also improved by the government. And the situation that today we are into, unless that is addressed, that until the time the situation for the proposal is accepted, I think that's another area that I find that we have continuously gone through that violation of our human rights. My suggestion to the government and through this forum is that the first point that you brought was about the IDP, internally displaced people term that you use. I think government must be forced to develop a policy around dealing with internally displaced people, because I know the governments do not allow the outsiders or non stakeholders to be part of it by declaring IDP, so giving IDP status to Kashmiri Pandits. So government should come up with some internal policy on IDP, and based on that, they should firm certain propositions how to deal and how to avoid such things for the larger society. As far as the education hub is concerned, it's really fascinating when you talk about the 500 acres of proposed campus. I think if you look around the world, this the proposition that you made about educational hub, it's not an impossible thing to visualize. If you look around the world, there are many great cities in the world where we have education hubs, or where they are also called the student cities. And if I recall correctly, we have, for example, Oxford, we have, or London, Munich, Seoul. There are so many student cities which have been developed on the concept that you proposed. And these cities are full with bridges, canals, industry clusters, monumental buildings, and creating so much of employability, livelihood opportunities for people, and so much of community hubs that these clusters have created. So I think what you have proposed as an educational hub is absolutely a brilliant idea. And if this is pursued, I think it can be a real great asset to not only the community but to the larger society, because I think that hub will not only cater to the students of Kashmiri Pandit community, it will cater to a larger community comprising of many people from all over the country, and it can actually disseminate the right values that we have been talking about and what you have been talking about. At the end, I will say that Kashmiri Pandits have to assert, and we have to assert in all forms. We may have different voices, but I think all voices have to assert together. I call my community like a Google community, where there are multiple ways with one destination, but there is no one way that is perfect. Either we have to predict the future perfectly, which is very difficult. So unless the future is not envisioned the way you have done today, we will not be able to move forward. And there are many other people in the community who have different vision about the community. I think we all need to assert, and we all need to push the government of India to make sure that the return, rehabilitation, and resettlement is done with complete dignity, with complete objectivity. And the return should not be like we have a settlement in the Jagti or we have settlement in some other camp. The return should be on the basis of the terms that we have set, what you have mentioned. And I wish you all the best and good luck to what you are doing. All the best, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak on this occasion.
Thank you so much, Rajji. That was absolutely brilliant. All your points are very well taken, especially when you say that we have to assert 32 years. Sorry, is quite a long time for a community to be suffering in exile, especially when you are talking about the camps in Jammu and Nagrota. I'm happy to note that you found the educational hub as a great possibility, and you see good hope with that. Every other point, very well taken, and we shall be discussing that further with the experts, Arbindoji, Rakeshji, Virendraji, Surendraji, and everybody else. Thank you for being part of this. Thank you for giving us your expert inputs and always being there as a support and as an encouraging person from the field. My next guest and panelist today is Dr. Madhu Bharti ji. She is a professor at Faculty of Planning, CEPT University, Ahmedabad. She is a development policymaker with more than 30 years of experience, having worked for Housing and Urban Development Corporation. She has carried out extensive work in the field of land and housing, urban development and employment, urban development and infrastructure, rural livelihood, and employment. Being an academician, she has taken the responsibility of initiating young minds to non-conventional approaches for urban and social development initiatives, livelihood options, vulnerable area redevelopment. She has also worked extensively on a variety of research and consultancy programs for international agencies and several spatial development projects in the UT of Jammu and Kashmir. Professor Madhu Bharti ji, waiting to hear your views. Please.
Yeah, thank you, Nirja ji. And first and foremost, my namaskar to all the community members here. Needless to say, this was a wonderful presentation. And Aurobindo has really, and Aurobindo, I mean, I have known him for a long time, and he has really outlined and such a detailed presentation in each sector how it will be. While I was listening to it, and I thought one of the fundamental and the important part of it is how we get the administrative council together. Now we are talking about earmarking a land area of almost 5,000 square kilometers, a little bit more than 5,000 square kilometers, if I remember the numbers right. And that means it is almost double than the district of Srinagar. Okay, that much of area we are talking about. Now, currently, if you see that area, there are already people living there, and who have the rights to the land, who have the rights to the property, or they may be illegally, some of them may be illegally squatting on other people's right. So when we talk about this development of the administrative council, autonomous administrative council, so are we talking about having those people onto that land? Or do we have a way forward for that also? How do we get the land?
Madhuji, can I come in? I'll quickly explain to you.
Yeah.
The hub this area, we are asking for 1,000 square kilometers.
Yeah, that is a beginning.
Yeah, in the beginning. And
Yes.
In that, there is no land acquisition involved. It will be just re-designated as an autonomous district.
Yes.
And the people living there, they will live as they are without any disturbance.
Yes. So
that is one thing. But the land acquisition will be involved for the university part, for the industry part, and the housing part. That is very minuscule.
Okay. So even when we are talking about this autonomous region, basically when we as Kashmiri Pandits want to have an autonomous region, we are also talking about having a control, administrative control on that autonomous region. Yes. Now, if you already have an indigenous population which is living on that land today, in the democratic process, they will be also part of that administrative council. So then all the effort that we are making to get a control of that area, that may not happen. Okay, I'm just raising a red flag. Maybe we have a detailed plan of how we are going to do that, but I'm just raising a red flag that because there is already a certain population living in that area, and if you're going to have a democratic process through this administrative regions, it may not happen. Other thing that I want to highlight is that when we're talking about development of these industries, education units, housing, employment, it's a bit of a chicken and egg. What are we going to do first? Maybe we need to have a multiple approach, not focusing on one thing, but having 5 or 10 different things which can develop at the same time, in the same timeline. Only then you will have houses which are built, and those people who are living in those houses, they will find an employment there. So it is not one after the other. It needs to happen together. And I don't see it in a short time span of 1 to 3 years. Maybe 1 to 8 to 10 years is our short-term plan. short-term plan for this kind of because we are actually talking about building a whole new city, and we know that Rome was not built in a day. And so we can have kind of a realistic timeline. So we're talking about building, if you're talking about building industries, you're talking about having the infrastructure for those industries, you're talking about inviting the industries to come to set up their place within that administrative area. So I think it is a little longer timeline. So maybe we should be talking about a realistic timeline and doing multiple things together which will support each other. So if we have say a university, I say maybe the administrative council will only need to set up the university administrative system. They don't need to set up the whole teaching lines. They don't need to set up specialization in engineering or specialization in robotics or pharmacy. There will be private colleges all over India and from all abroad, everywhere. They will all be willing and happy to be associated there, and they can set up their private colleges there. So the college can be independent owned, so to say, a private college, but the university will be able to give the affiliated degrees. So university will have a limited role. So what happens in this process is that this 75,000 crore that we are talking about, that money, it becomes smaller and smaller because you're talking about limited role for the administrative council and the associated things. The rest of it is done through the private domain. So if we go with that kind of approach, maybe that 75,000 crores, which seems very big, and also I understand that is not money which we are talking about 1 year, 2 year or 3 years. It's going to be spread over next 10, 15, 20 years. The other thing that I was thinking about is how do we set up industries that are industries which can feed on the local produce? I mean, a lot of fruit and other things which happens in the local areas. How do we set up industries which are able to add value to that product and export and do everything with that kind of industry? The example of Bhutan, it's such a small state, it produces a lot of fruit, and it does all packaging and sells those fruit and fruit juice all over the world. So I think it is probably possible for Kashmir to do that very well. Another important aspect that I was thinking about is that how we attract private investment, especially in the real estate sector, from other parts of the country. Kashmir, like it is a kind of a dream trip for everybody, at least in India, at least in Gujarat, where I live, and everybody wants to go to Kashmir. So maybe that is something that we should leverage on, that it's possible to set up a kind of hospitality areas where we are talking about places where you have time sharing models. It is not necessary, even my parents or my mother, maybe she doesn't want to be in Kashmir for a whole year, but if she gets a week there in a time sharing model, maybe that is possible. And I'm sure if the real estate developers from other parts of the country are invited in this process, it would be great. It is not possible, probably, it is not possible for the Kashmiri Pandit community to do all these activities because there are different kinds of skill which everybody needs. And the community has kind of skills which are mostly into literate community, academically inclined community which are into white collar jobs, kind of a high level kind of jobs. But if you need to run a city, you also need a different set of people. So how do you attract them? How do you get people from UP? Do you get people from Bihar? How do you get those people? How do you make sure that those people are safe in that area? So I think the vision which Aurobindo presented is absolutely excellent, but maybe it needs a little bit of working in certain sections where it needs to have some more details. Because actually, if we want it to work, if we want this vision plan to work, we need to completely detail out those sections. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Professor Bharti. Yes, you raised some very pertinent, some very, I'm sure, and I've heard a lot of talk going on about all the points that you just shared. And I would have invited Virendraji or Rakesh or Arbindoji to pitch in, but we can do that discussion later because there's a paucity of time. And I would like to invite the next guests, but definitely this is going to be addressed with your inputs and keeping you included in this whole exercise of ours. So thank you so much for being part of this panel today. I welcome and I thank you. Another Ranavarian. I'm from Ranavari too. So yeah, glad to meet you. My next guest is not a guest. He is another GKPD force, Utpalji. Everybody knows him. Our international coordinator, a social activist for life, a historian, publisher. He has everything under his belt, and he's the person who you would reach out to when you need something and you need any kind of insight into our Kashmiri culture, and be it books or be it religion, be it anything. So Utpalji, please unmute yourself and let's hear you.
Namaskar, Maharaj. Mich kath wanni. So chu ki yuthu is drai kashiri. Asli chu yaad thawun ki 10 December, so basically pata 8 December 89 peth go exodus start. 19th January 1990 gav ye firmly established कि बटन असा हेकिन मा कशीर रूजित March April 90th मज दुत अस गोडनुक रेस्पॉन्स अथ प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करित कि वुनकस द्राय अस अति बट वी आर कमिंग सून June 90th मज कोर अस गोडनुक कन्वेंशन यत मज nearly 800 delegates अस युजन युवक सभा तरफ क्या युवक सभा तम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन अमरनाथ जी वैष्णवी हिरालाल जी चत्ता अग्निशेखर Ashwini Ajay myself and so many other activists at that time I soch I Arvind ji tam waqtan available I Madhu Bharti ji tam waqtan available yumzan I advice kari hai I sirf junoon कि इस गसो कशीर वापस ऐसे सोच अत मुतलक ऐसे वन ज चीज बाकी चीज ते वन मगर ऐसे कर 4 रेजोल्यूशन अकिस मज वोन ऐसे गस कॉसी परमानेंट सेटलमेंट तो युथु इस कशीर गसो वापस ऐसे गस मिलुन सिक्योरिटी जोन so we for the first time asked for some place because it is not possible for us now to live as we were living in Kashmir for centuries. So it was a demand which was for the first time taken by BBC also, that Kashmiri Pandits want security zone in Kashmir. But this security zone is on OS, you told the Sarni Fikri, Kasi permanent settlement, I see the camp vamp. I see the Kanjai, Dom Porsi Mans, Nishi Kunijai, Mansbag, is an is but a seri Yakov Rujit, Yakov, Aram San Rujit. I should guarantee Tigasan. Mother, you cut poor Samjan Kurtre, poor Kamse Kam Sajiho Pansaho scholar, university in professor is, him's an engineer is, him's a doctor is, find a timing eminent Kashmiri Pandits is. They put their head together. Yatran is Vananchi, October, December 1991, Marg Darshan resolution. Margdarshan resolution as months won I say ki asasa gachi ak jay yatmazan but aram san heki ruzit yuzan Hindustan kis kanunas manan chu as gachi union territory Osekav aram san ruzit kyaizki ashu flow of Indian constitution gachi tati asun tati gachi na article 370 asun tati gachi na 35A asun im cheez gasan na ase Asi chip iskaro pane resources istemal iskaro panun demag istemal yuzan us hekau ye ak promising land banayit ye chalev ye kur setha zyad accept luko pur dunyahas maz aaye button has kat pan Kashmir ye homeland resolution pur sarvi discuss but soch samjhun but support mila magar az gay ve as aktar huri ashu resolution pass kormut ashu atpet kam se kam vetu ashu vanan butter pan Kashmir baki organization at kam se kam asan atpet hat bait sas bait program magar government and baki agency tim chi ye kani hish atwana kani katna malab yim chi dapan he it should possible it should possible magar bugo setha khosh az dot zveri bro yaftan Arvind ji panun ka ak no proposal Yusan Arvind ji is the master Madhubharati ji they are masters in their field. And when somebody is from the community who understands community very well and then puts his head together, uses his intellect, his experience, and his knowledge of history of his community and his native land, his homeland. Virender ji supported him. Rakesh ji was founding one board pillar Arvind ji's side. And so they came with a wonderful, wonderful project and paper or what we call as a resolution or aspiration. You think Gorniki do Arvind ji and you both know to Rakesh ji and Prusme, what is your opinion? Ikyachu. Medumus Ishume Basan, finer piece of Margdarshan resolution. You should zyada sophisticatedly amut banavne kya ashe us yits and detail and pet kalam kar. Yits as na samjhi tamak. Ashe us main samjh ki achu kashiri wapas gasun. Ashe chuna yimozan as mar yimozan as halat tit pada kar. As hekav na timan sit ithai pat ruzit. As hekav na tait mahlas mans gesit at mahlas mans rozan is. Ashe Hindustan Uchi vana Bharat Mata ki jai, uchi vana Vande Mataram. Us yetet bihamo tatet vana was Bharat Mata ki jai, us vana tatet Vande Mataram. Bechu ye appreciate karu. Rakesh ji shu 50 vari gamut, 60 vari 50 vari gayimus America hasmas. But he has not forgotten his Jogi Lankar and ran away. Arvind ji shu kes Africa hasmas, Madhu ji shu Gujarat hasmas, Virender ji os matlab Samandar par, achi Nirja ji, me wasa ridvari sopun doy bichan, achi Surendar ji, chu America hasmaz, buchus dilemmas, physical body meon chi ye dilemmas, magar meon mind soul, chu ridvari smaz, chu Kashir maz. Yidis ma example. Isiliye chu ak bat yu jagti maz rozan, ak bat yuzan talab tilos maz rozan chu. But yus Noidas manchu rozan, yusan Delhi manchu rozan, yus Gujarat rozan, Bangalore rozan, Bombay rozan, ya you New Jersey maz rozan, ya Johannesburg maz rozan, ya Auckland maz rozan. You should take the physical body emsun rozan, magar emsun mind, emsun soul, chu Kashir maz. Isliye Kashiri Gatsun to Sikit Porch, I say Gatsun, Tamuk blueprint, Yuzan Arvind Jian, with the help of Virender ji, Rakesh ji, Bay Sarvi, Yuzan Yupur, Uchak Bodbar Mubarak. Yat one of his Bosch to chew. To Yuchu, Yohoi, I say community Fikrita. And Meru Luke Wing remarks most the Facebook is pet. He welcome to Susan John suggestion. You begging you John suggestion. You suggest Arvindoji, you suggest him how it will be made finer. It was an I say Nehrujian Winkesatan Zabardast Asal suggestion. It was Madhu Bhartiji Winkesatan Bada Asal suggestion. Dimchi Bada practical suggestion. And we have to take advice of all these people because it is not I say Banovi issue Bhagavad Gita, I say I'm Shaluki can't do it. I say improve it. I should magar separate us months Yohoi, I should Kashiri Wapas Gason, a skid point Hakav Jan, Port Rusian, Beishai Banaun, Kashir Tits, Yat Yuzan is Singapore's competition demo, Yuzan is competition demo. Hong Kong's competition demo is Banao Yutu Paradise, Yatmos Abno Gupt Rosano Satan. Yatmazan, I say, Isakao Martin Temple Bay develop Kirim, Yatmazan, Isakao Aram San, Duniakin scholar and William Ichijai, Yetipuri, Person Hun Sang of Kashir Eat Sing of Taranat. Isle Buso Toy Sardi, which is Shurguzar, which was thankful. I am personally thankful to Arvind ji. I am personally thankful to Virender ji, Rakesh ji, and all of you who put their head together for making this very, very successful. Post Shu, Mubarak Shu community. Namaskar Maharaj. Dhanyavad.
Seta Abar Utpalji, Kashir Point one Khatra, yes, she has answered Kashir Point Kaskarin, Magar, unfortunately. ये message छन खाली एस्पानस खतर ये सारनी खतर all across India, all across the world. So we want everybody to hear what we are saying, what our aspirations are, what our aims are, and we want to convey it very strongly and to the point. Once again, Utpalji, many thanks. I would like to invite now Yoginder Kohlji. Yoginder Kohlji, as we all know, has had an illustrious career. He's a retired IGP from J&K, having worked across in all fields of police, security, anti-corruption, terrorism, counterintelligence, crime investigation, and disaster management. He has also worked with UN mission in Bosnia during 2001 and 2002. He is a recipient of several medals, including President's Medal for Distinguished Service, State Meritorious Medal, and much more honor and medals all through his career. And he is actively involved in social and educational empowerment currently in Jammu. So Yoginder ji, please, the stage is yours. Please share your thoughts. You'll have to unmute yourself, Mara.
Namaskar, Mara, Nirja ji.
Namaskar.
I thank all the distinguished panelists. I heard a lot of them, and the preparation they did for this getting out today. Finally, the vision of this GKPD. I am really amazed to see how much hard work has been put by Professor Aurobindo, Mr. Virender ji, and heard others also who had some slight modification with the program. Quite relevant was that also. I just wonder how this entire vision has been prepared. It would rather get him a award for a PhD in some prestigious university. The quantum of work, this detail, the minor details, all sort of it. We can just conceive. I just conceive a modern Singapore, a modern Hong Kong, Shanghai, like that. But it's a utopian concept. It should be, and I wish I live. Maybe if I don't live up till that, may my progeny, the Kashmiris, would like to see and live in this land. Coming to the point now, because I am among the panelists who stay in Jammu, I have the first brunt always living with my own people because somehow I managed to stay back in Jammu because majority of the community still lives here and they are really living in camps and in a most inhuman condition. We have heard a lot of reports so far, vision document from various organizations, giving just passing time, but nothing concrete has been translated on ground. Rather, the situation is getting more complex and confuse our future plan. Now, shortly, our generation will also be going now, and new generations coming up. Those who were at that time when they just migrated from Kashmir were 30. Today they are 62, 63, like me. Now it's the next generation who was born in Jammu and brought in different environment. They will now search for our motherland. Where is our lost tribe? Which place we belong to? Although I'm hardly 200 kilometers away from my motherland. Among those who stayed back in our home state, that is J&K, who has still substantial presence here in this state and are connecting link with our roots in Kashmir, waiting for safe return to our ancestral land. Return to our motherland is to claim our identity with inalienable rights to Vale of Kashmir, without which we'll be losing our compactness, originality, language, cultural moorings, being its active stakeholders in any resolution of Kashmir emergently. Anything Kashmir will be, if at all it will be resolved, we are the stakeholders. We will not leave it. Come what may, whichever the government will be there. So long the last Kashmiri Pandit lives in J&K, we will not leave it. Our future is decided, and we will do ourselves. KP has substantially contributed since creation of Kashmir, being its aborigines. The vast displaced community got scattered with terrorist onslaught in early 1990, and few of us are sustaining on pitiable relief and accommodation after hard fight, which can hardly meet requirements of dignified human existence in camps with vast unemployment. Losing enormous movable and immobile generation of our property, which was acquired by from our generation, and finally facing bargaining to face dire consequences for not subscribing majority perception, which we became, to which we didn't subscribe to that. And our ethnic cleansing, genocide start taking place and throwing us out of our own homeland, being the patriotic community who cherished democracy, secularism, mutual coexistence, which we operated in a jiffy when the situation developed there. The roots of separation and total radicalization had spread tentacles in state long before 90. So I must not miss it, how we sustained. I have served in Kashmir, in the remotest parts of the Kashmir, how the Kashmir has a tremendous resilience, and those who are still in Jammu camps living, those who have kept this culture of Kashmir active. I have not heard, I being a city dweller, I came to know a lot of information about Kashmiris, how they protected after 47, how they lived in Kupwara, how they lived at Trihgam, Tikipura, Kupwara area, Baramulla, how much onslaught, but even then, we just managed ourselves. We just respected our community workers and lived with them. But with the coming of the support from Pakistan and the pan-Islamic countries with petrodollars pumping in, with the breakup of the USSR, with its communist ideology to prepare Khorasan, including Kashmir in its net, which was misread by our security planners in that time. Today, you won't find any respectable Kashmiri Pandit in whole of Jammu and Kashmir because of disempowerment due to marginalization. We were led after the Awami government took reins in the state government. They wanted to create a nation within a nation. Important issues to attend on priority than managing today. What is we want to manage our existing crisis. We are not to be counted anywhere in this free country as if we have no stake in this. We have reports presently, the government is doing something on the issue of return, but it is doing at a snail's pace. Maybe they may be not confident because of our own diverse demands from so-called organization for resettlement with no common focus. Our demand may not be matching their ethos, what I feel, even if whatever we have been discussing with the organization, who the powers at the center, that may not be matching with their ethos of how they just want like to be modern Bharat. and our conflicting views also from the various splinter Kashmiri organizations operating on various channels across country, outside, exerting one-man upship over others to say that they are the real representatives. Can't we get united and put a common object and support each other for dignified return to our own place? To me, it till it matures, whatever the today's concept paper was, it's a very, I think, God bless him, how much hard work he had, how much calculations he did, how much in finer points he has had. It is just like corporate a piece of blueprint. Had it been some European country, he would have definitely rewarded for it. To me, till this matures, what has been conceived and prepared, it may take, it's a long time, it's not a short-term measure, it can be, till it matures, the pot is present in our hand. That is the best, because the community can't wait for another 30 years, if not given a proper steering at this time to get a foothold in the valley, is through the PM package program for unemployment youth, conceived long before 2008 by the previous government, which is not still implemented with half-hearted approach. Even ancient quota has not been used so far. That indicates the seriousness. It works. It works for the rehabilitation plan of this hapless community. The service conditions under which those who volunteer to work in hostile, insecure atmosphere is totally discriminatory, with bleak future of career progression. This could have been taken by our legal luminary, and I had put always more WhatsApp. Please kindly take this issue, because this is the road which will lead us ultimately to our homeland. Because we are basically based on getting employed. And this other slight window opening, that too is not being exploited by our organization, by the powers which matter for us. They too are totally giving up, just passing it as it is nothing. To me, it's a big issue if it can be well exploited. This is the employment program is totally on unfriendly terms. It is a mere dole rather for a permanent settlement in our homeland. And these very young generation could have charted their future in Kashmir, being this indigenous community, when many strides have been made by this very community, especially after the revolution of informal technology throughout the world by our community members holding higher positions. This program is of employment of Kashmiri PM package, which was earmarked for 6,000 employees. You will totally get aghast today. It is not more than 1,500, 1,600. After 13 years, why is our community going? What we are doing? Accepting being on webinars and discussing English. It's not that. One should be able to get things done. That is how a community survives. And we people have been cherishing this government, this nation has been cherishing uniform fundamental rights. We don't have a minority status. We are in minority. And very much it is the enshrined constitution of India. But we have not been so far. Even we have got a positive government for the last 7-8 years, which has been quite amenable, sympathetic to our cause. But still, we find ourselves totally as alien to this dispensation, and we want to secure ourselves. We want to preserve our culture. We want to flourish and find a proper place in this vast subcontinent of India, which is landlocked area, subject to various trials and tribulations since inception, from raiders and through proselytization. But even then, we kept our head always high and extend our help to all others. This PM employment initiative. Yes.
Yogendraji, sorry to interrupt. We are. I know you're about to finish. Thank you. Okay. Go ahead.
I will just cut short.
Yes.
The roots of separatism and total radicalization had separate tentacles, as I told you long back. But I would last of all, we all should trust till the program, till the white paper, which has been totally discussed, of course, theoretically all today also, we aspire also. There's a lot of aspiration, and it's full of, I must give encomiums to the professor who did a lot of work. But where to start it? Where to start it? After our youth is getting overaged, they are getting totally disgusted with the setup. This employment initiative needs to be taken on such a speed so that they feel somebody is caring for us. Suppose in case about 3,000 youth get employment initially, it can indirectly help return of more than 1 lakh members of the community through, though it may cause inconvenience initially, but gain will be ours. We'll get back to our home. We can, meanwhile, we could think if we have to get we can, if this employment program succeeds, we can get concentrated at a carve out a particular place in South Kashmir with a particular geographical area, which can be self-reliant. It can be through phases, as the Jews have done. They just got their lost area back. It's not basically the government came to their rescue. The government then comes when you become in commanding position and hold a separate land. How come you can just get a hill council when you are nowhere? You are scattered. We're not living in ghettos or a certain region. First of all, we have to carve out an area because the population has been scattered all along the valley. How they can be assembled and kept at one place? Then this program can be translated, which is very visionary, and I think the future generation will definitely, if we succeed in this mission, they will just otherwise they will curse us that we have let them down, and today they will tomorrow they will not find themselves any homeland to call themselves as Kashmiri aborigines of Kashmir. So it needs, because the time is right. There is no 370 now. There is no 35 as abbreviated. This is the time we can make a demographic change. But everybody, whosoever is outside India, they must put their heads together. At car, a touch place, not mechanical. It is to be done physically. Thank you, Jai Hind. God bless all the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Mara. Thank you, Yogendraji, for such a. It's always wonderful to hear you and hear your views, and you're always there to support, to share your thoughts, and they're very well taken. Sorry about the time is a little.
No issue. No issue.
Time.
I am basically interested in doable things. Utopian concept should be the vision, but how to get what is in your hand, get it, consolidated. Thank you.
Your blessings and blessings from the community and everybody else, we will get there. That's a promise. Last but not the least, of course, we have Dr. Surinder Kaul here. I know he's been waiting very patiently to say his piece, so I leave everything to him to share the global Kashmiri Pandit Diaspora's call for action and how we are going to take it forward. This is all yours, and namaskar, and thank you for.
Namaskar to everyone. Let me start first thanking the whole audience for their rapt attention. As we are in the third hour, this is the third hour our discussion is going on, and I see that the whole audience is glued and listening very patiently. Thanks for that. Professor Ogra Sahab, Virender ji, Rakesh ji, I should commend you for this, not only a vision document, but an roadmap and an action plan. This is different because you have put in the appropriate sections of the Indian Constitution. You have put in the framework of the judiciary recourse, and you have put in the dimension of all the nitty-gritties, how to do it. So that makes it different. I know that we are running into 32nd year of our exile, and in these 32 years we have seen lots of good intent documentations and return plan that has been submitted to the governments from time to time, but the document that you have created is absolutely different from what we are used to. So on that note, I should commend you all. As you all know that Global Kashmiri Pandit Diaspora is not an organization. It is a civil society movement of all the Kashmiri Pandits all around the globe. So there is no hierarchy, there is no board, but the only interest is the community interest. And we have various interest groups in the global Kashmiri Pandit diaspora who works on different projects. And that is the beauty of global Kashmiri Pandit diaspora, that anybody who has passion to deliver or do certain things, please come forward. You create your team and work on it. And that is basically, that concept has been working well. That few years ago, those who had interest in business groups for the community came together and created Global Kashmiri Pandit Business Foundation. And they are working, they are interacting with the government. Similarly, we had one group that was led by Professor Ogra Sahab about the return, rehabilitation, resettlement plan, and has been doing complete research for the last 2 years. I know that many of us will be having many concerns, apprehensions. Oh, is this going to be the same paper that we have been sending for the last 32 years? I will walk you through. But before I do that, we all need to understand that every year is very important for us. And every year we lose is actually making us, our extinction, much more closer. So we don't see that we have a magic band in our hands and we can take care of everything. But this is a serious attempt from the community, which will be going to the government, where everything will be taken into considerations. It will be very hard for them to deny. It's an effort. We may fail, but we will work hard to see that where it reaches, where it has to reach. Now, I would submit to all of you that the coming year is very, very important, even though every year is very important for us, because please be assured there will be a mountain of sympathy and support coming for the community. I promise you for that. You might have seen in US how the community is being talked by African Americans, and even senators. This is the change that we try to bring, and we are working on that. And we are taking steps in the right direction. And as call for action is concerned, where we know that it's challenging, it has lots of complexities, we have to deep dive into the political system in India. We have to penetrate into that. And for your information, we have started that work. We have started reaching out to all political parties in India, apprising them about our concerns and what we need. And in that, including BJP, we are writing to Congress Party, we are writing to Shiv Sena, we are writing to all political mainstream organizations. And I just want to give you a good news. We will be raising our voice in the Indian Parliament as well. For your information, a private member bill has been submitted to Indian Parliament along with the resolution. And these are on the similar lines that Professor Ogra Sahab, Virender ji, Rakesh ji have mentioned. And hopefully, by the grace of God, if all goes well, we will have something to hear in this current budget session. And some part has already come into the Parliament, but we are expecting some more. But there is a caveat. I just wanted to let you know also, because we are very transparent in that. And that has been submitted. The caveat is that the private member bills, the current session, in the budget session, they have allocated 4 days for private member bills. to be taken up. And as a rule, private member bills, it is the draw of lots on that particular day. And if Mata Regina and Saraswati bless us, and if that is in the lot, it will be presented in the Indian Parliament in this session. So that is number one. Number two is that we have already written to Congress party, whether we have written to Rahul Gandhi, we have written to Priyanka Gandhi, we have written to Sonia Gandhi also. And we have received a note that yes, we need to do something for Kashmiri Pandit rehabilitation. So we will move. We will put in our best efforts. So this is the call for action is number one, political outreach. And we are doing that. Second part is about judiciary outreach. About, as we have defended that all these things that has been presented with various sections of the Indian Constitution, with the various sections of the governance plan, so that we need the answers from them. We will engage with the government. We will see. We have started some back channels. We will aggressively now exert on that. And currently, this is in the review. I know that this has been for 2 years, has been working hard in these 2 years, especially in last 6 months. There has been an outreach with the community think tank to get their feed on what do they think about it. And for your information, the community think tank, which includes judiciary experts, the bureaucratic experts, the academicians, and the civil society experts, it has met the scrutiny to move further. And for everyone, I know everybody will have lots of questions. Yeah, please, we'll upload this whole thing in our website. You please give us our feedback, all positive, all negative that you think. We will not think that, oh, it's impossible, don't do anything. That means that you are giving this whole Kashmir, you are surrendering and handing it over in a plate. We don't want to listen to that. We will exert, these are our rights. And as indigenous community, we have special rights. And as indigenous aborigines of community, we have to use that both in the context of India and internationally. So this is my request for the whole community to come together. With all of you together, things will be different. So this is my request, this is my appeal, that please get involved. Next 1 or 2 years are very, very crucial for us, and we have to exert. On a sidelines, I should also inform you that we have other interest groups within the GKPD who are working on different aspects. Somebody has interest on temples, somebody has interest on culture, somebody has interest on literature. So please come forward, take a lead, and let us deliver things. And one of the themes that we are now going to constitute is that our community has never reciprocated violence with violence, despite being victims of ethnic cleansing and genocide. If there has to be a peace award from Nobel Laureate Committee for any community, that has to be for our community. And we are having one team, they will work to write letters to the Nobel Laureate Committee about showcasing this community as the right recipient of the Nobel Laureate Peace Award. We have to think big. We don't have to think small. We can do things, we can turn mountains, provided we have that dedication, we have that commitment. And I request everyone once again to kindly dedicate some time for the community. Whatever you are doing, you be part of any organization, please do it. And keep the flag of the community hoisted all the time, because the entry of the community is for the well-being of the local population. Another action plan is engagement with the civil society in Kashmir. And we need to hear what we are discussing, it should come from there. We should have engagement process with the civil society in Kashmir, and we will try to do that in coming time. And last but not the least is our own resilience, our own determination. And we got to do this for our civilization. It's not the matter of our rehabilitation, it is the matter of recreating the civilization there. So civilization has to be recreated, and that will be the litmus test of abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, leaving aside infrastructure development and all that good things that government is doing. We have faith in the current government, and we think that we need to play this game on a front foot, and we need to start thinking of coming to the roads. And that is in our thing in next 6 months. We are finding that we have to have some protest for no action being done from the government as well. And that is our fundamental right, and we should use it. So on this note, I will just get back to you, Neerja ji. Always thank you for conducting this event so nicely and gracefully. And all the panelists, Judge Saab spoke so well and brought in the judicial aspect about this. Dr. Raj Nehru Saab, acclaimed person, gave his viewpoints. Professor Bharati ji gave the viewpoints, and always pleasure hearing you, Utpal ji, Yoginder ji, and Shafalika ji. As always, we are very thankful to you for keeping this whole thing running and keeping our spirits and keeping us in line. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, Surendraji. As always, pleasure and inspiring to hear you and come up with such great action plans that we're always on our toes, never a moment to pause and think. We have such a great person to lead us through this, and I am hoping and praying every day, as somebody said, that Utpalji mentioned that no matter where we are in the world, our heart and soul is always there, be it Ranawari, Habakadal, wherever, Karfil Mohalla, wherever we belong to. So thank you, Surendraji, for bringing in such wonderful points and sharing our way forward. Thank you to all the panelists who spared their very valuable time here, listening to us, listening to the speakers, and giving their honest and fair feedback. And this will be a process, ongoing process, and I'm sure Arbindoji, Virendraji, and Rakeshji will address all the queries that have come up during this discussion. Once again, say a huge thank you to all of you, and I pass on to Shafalika. Oh, sorry.
I want to make one comment. I want to make one comment for all the community members. Please file for your domicile certificates. Please do that. If you're having difficulty, reach out. This is very, very important. And again, this not only the community that became victims of genocide and ethnic cleansing, but also the communities that have left prior to 1947. If you have contacts with them, as GKPD, we are also contacting them, and they should be also part of a legitimate part of this process, and we need to include them. And also, we don't have to keep community. Our community is wider. We have to work with Indian communities like we did it in US with the Indian diaspora, whether it was Telugu Samaj, Punjabi Samaj, Gujarati Samaj. That is going to make a difference. That is going to create a pressure, and that is the difference we need to see. That important thing I wanted to share with you.
Yes, thank you, Surendraji, and namaskar to everybody. I'll pass on to Shafalika ji. Thank you, Arvindoji. Again, my admiration for you grows every day.
Thank you, Neerja-ji. I started the webinar thinking we will be finished in 2 hours, but nearly 3 hours later, I'm sitting here in rapt attention. It has been inspiring listening to all of you and the audience. We have had really constructive feedbacks on the Facebook page. We will be taking down all the comments and we will be working through them. Excellent panel, excellent presentations. It's only upwards for us. You know, whatever steps we take, it is going to lead us back to motherland. So with that, namaskar to Sairni. Have a good day till we meet again. But like Surendraji said, the COVID is hopefully over now. The next call of action is going to be on the roads. So we hope to see you on the roads as we struggle for our rights. Thank you. Namaskar.
Namaskar, everyone.